Japan, a small island country of over 125 million citizens. Among the land lie sacred areas and deep city streets. In the night, crime thrives. But in this Japan, there exists an equalizer, a harbinger of death that keeps evil from creeping past the rising sun, trapped in the darkness where it belongs. But in order to restrain the darkness, one must walk the path less traveled, paved instead with good intentions. The ones known to carve this path are known as hitmen, and the natural order of Japan is kept together by these hitmen. And once, some time ago, there was a hitman who was considered the greatest of all time. And his name was Taro Sakamoto. Without a doubt, a legend of his generation, and perhaps many before his own, Taro Sakamoto truly lived up to his name, both in demeanor and in skill. Criminals feared him. His fellow hitmen envied him. But even the most unstoppable forces meet an opposite, an immovable match. And in Taro Sakamoto's case, his most worthy opponent of all was love. Like it was nothing. Tossing his old life behind, Taro Sakamoto retired from the assassin lifestyle, married the newfound love of his life, and had a child of his own. But most notably among those Sakamoto knew in the past, Taro Sakamoto got out of shape. One of the newest additions to Shonen Jump, starting serialization in November of 2020, both written and illustrated by Yuto Suzuki. Sakamoto Days combines both satirical and more adult-themed comedy along with stunning and memorable choreography in a pace that keeps you excited to see what's next, and yet not finding any boredom in the repeat action and plot contrivances that allow the narrative to continue down the specific path it finds necessary to give us the most satisfying ride on this journey. Born out of a one-shot titled simply Sakamoto, released the previous year, Sakamoto Days follows the story of said Taro Sakamoto, previously unrivaled hitman, who was just trying to live an honest life with his wife Aoi Sakamoto and child Hana. Having now opened up a simple convenience store named after their last name, intending to settle down in a humble role as jack of all trades for the community he has decided to set up shop in. A common place frequented by children and other neighborhood characters alike, the quiet, aloof Sakamoto is able to blend in fairly easily in such a quaint, homey environment. Known for always being a man of few words, he's able to fade into the background of this town for over 5 years without a hitch. This time of peace displayed quite shamefully in the added pounds of weight put on to the once great assassin and his new laid-back personality. However, this calm life is shattered by the arrival of an old co-worker of Sakamoto's, Shin Asakura, a clairvoyant capable of reading people's thoughts. Shin shows up after 5 years of silence in an attempt to re-recruit his old friend back into the world of hitmen, completely unable to grasp any understanding of why Taro would waste his talents for such a boring existence. Able to read minds though, Shin immediately gets the hint that Sakamoto has no intentions of returning to his former glory, having found true happiness where he exists as of now. But he quickly reminds Shin that despite his resignation to the assassin world, he's still capable of eliminating any threats that may come his way. A statement Taro himself actually has to make good on a lot sooner than he had hoped. Shin was ordered to take Sakamoto out if he doesn't return, but he's immediately turned on his head when trying to make good on that promise. Sakamoto still retains enough finesse to block a fired bullet from Shin's gun with a cough drop. You heard me, a cough drop. Sakamoto then proceeds to use his own store's stock of cream puffs and band-aids to immediately reverse the situation back onto Shin, waking up after being knocked unconscious to a warm cooked dinner with Sakamoto and his family. In one short night, Shin is blessed with an amazing meal made with love for the first time in his life, something he's never experienced in all of his years as a hitman. Understanding almost instantly why and how Taro could leave his prestigious career behind, there exists more than individual reputation and obligations to your career. Family triumphs all. And in Sakamoto Days, this might just be the single primary message that can be felt in every chapter. With every page turned, the author Yuto Suzuki puts across a theme of cherishing your loved ones and what people will go through in order to protect those loved ones. For a Shonen Jump series, the author is really able to harp on very adult themes, despite it possibly flowing over most younger readers' attention spans. Regardless, being great lessons for any who are willing to listen to what Suzuki is spitting, Taro Sakamoto is someone who will go to hell and back for his family, even at the cost of his own life or reputation, taking on any threat, large or small, if it means keeping those he loves safe. His own wife, Aoi Sakamoto, not even having a sense of fear anymore, knowing full well if there's ever any danger coming her way, her beloved husband can't be far behind. Something that Sakamoto always makes good on, even restricted behind the family rules that she, his wife, sets upon him. You see, coming from the crazy, intense life of being a hitman, it was an impossible culture difference having a convenience shop worker and assassin attempt to put a healthy life together. Early on into their relationship, staking their love on the line, Aoi reached an ultimatum with Taro that the man himself has made sure to honor in the love and confidence him and his wife share every day. Absolutely, positively, no killing. If Taro Sakamoto again ever takes a single life, he loses everything that makes his own life worth living. And that's not a sacrifice Sakamoto is willing to make. So even when it comes to rescuing those close to him, Taro has to ensure he does it completely non-lethally. Something that, although the world-class hitman is capable of, doesn't make his job of saving his family any easier. And the Sakamoto family doesn't extend to just his wife and child. The laid-back hitman has always had a soft side and held the ones around him close when he can. And now, with the stability and home life to do so, Taro Sakamoto is not afraid to open up the doors of family to those that may need it desperately. Even after an attempt on his life, Sakamoto still tells Shin to make sure he comes back to his shop one day to visit. And later, when Shin is about to lose his own life because he's unwilling to take Sakamoto's, brushing off the dust, old man Taro has no other choice but to flip the switch and step out of the shadows to save a person he once considered a close comrade, arriving in the nick of time to stop a bullet from going right into Shin's skull as the young assassin was fighting to his last breath. Despite being fully out of shape for almost 5 years, Sakamoto takes out the entire crew of low-life assassins without a single shred of effort, completely unlethal in his movements. Sakamoto displays once again that when he comes to protecting those he holds dear, the rust immediately shakes off, making a better use of his bare hands and a mere pocket knife than the group of criminals can use their own firearms. He still is, and always will be, the legendary hitman Taro Sakamoto, something that Shin himself is reminded of, discovering the only reason Taro was able to find out where he was due to a listening device he implanted into his gun, proving that not only does Sakamoto not give out his trust easily, he also only reciprocates when he's fully aware of the other person's intentions. And from that day on, for a humble wage of 850 yen an hour with extra for overtime, Shin Asakura joins the Sakamoto family as their newest convenience store employee. Just like that, it's that simple. Shin actually joins their family, able to use his clairvoyance to help those around the shop and neighborhood and live a new, honest life with Sakamoto as his new guide. Using his powers for good instead of assassination, choosing to follow the Sakamoto family rules not by force, but by his own choice, seeing them as the righteous and most meaningful way to live. This means helping people when they're in need, whether those that require rescue be your own kin or people that may even have it out for you. A good person doesn't choose the time and place to be brave. Quite the opposite. This also means taking no credit for the good deeds that you do, as credit means revealing your simple quiet life is just a ruse for something much more extravagant. Both Shin and Sakamoto, despite having the best intentions at heart and doing a general net positive for the community around them when they take out other criminals, must take any and all precautions to keep their identity hidden. In one of their escapades, Sakamoto ends up fighting so hard he slims down and returns to his original, in-shape, legendary hitman form. At the perfect timing too, because his identity would have been revealed if not for this transformation. This weight change is much more than cosmetic though, and there's still a lot more to explore about Taro Sakamoto than meets the eye. But more about that later. As Taro and Shin's attempts at living ordinary existences increasingly push them into wackier encounters, they stumble upon the daughter of a triad family, Lu Xiaotang, a woman who is on the run currently from an opposing triad family who has already taken out most of her own family, including her parents. leaving just her entrusted with the key to her family's treasure. Lu Xiaotang, through the crushing of our protagonist's beloved pork buns, entangles both Shin and Taro into the two warring triad organizations' dispute. Sakamoto and the newly invigorated and full of resolve Shin both realize they cannot leave Lu alone to handle this situation, and are immediately pulled into battle with the two hitmen that were sent to chase after her. Taking a huge kick right to the temple, the two assassins that were dispatched to end Lu's life are Son-hee and Bacho, famous twin serial killers that take immense pleasure in their assassination, sometimes taking home their decapitated heads for drawing practice. Most notably though, they're the ones that are responsible for taking out Lu Xiaotang's parents. A perfect representation of the dark underworld that the career of hitmen is littered by. Good people like Sakamoto and Shin are the exception. They are most certainly not the rule. And while these dangerous men may be a threat to both Shin and their newfound friend Lu, for the legendary hitman Taro Sakamoto, assassins like this are a dime a dozen. The battle taken into the bar below by Sakamoto's punch, the two twins Son-hee and Bacho are less than impressed with the power displayed by the washed-up hitman, instead choosing to taunt Lu Xiaotang about the death of her parents. Making fun of the young triad woman who just lost her entire family is about as despicable as it gets. They laugh at how tightly Lu holds on to her family's key, and the fact she's willing to stake her life on a material object is proof alone that she, in Son-hee's words, doesn't have 1 ounce of class. In a fit of rage, Lu responds with a justified intent of taking vengeance against her family's killers. But Sakamoto stops her just in time from sealing herself into a premature demise. Giving up and finding no more sense in playing mind games, Son-hee tosses a throwing knife right between the triad girl's eyes. However, it's blocked by the always agile Sakamoto, who frankly has heard more than enough. Declaring these two goons don't have any right to tell Lu what she can or can't choose to hold dear, the twin assassins vastly underestimate their opponent and begin their assault against Sakamoto, the last thing that stands in their way from completing their mission. And despite their coordinated team attacks, Sakamoto is able to effortlessly dodge every single one. Shocked that none of their slashes were able to even land a single cut, even the older brother starts to show some emotion for once as he realizes they're going to have to take this old-timer seriously. Preparing once again for a team attack, this time what appears to be their final ability. Declaring Sakamoto would have only been the third person to witness this move, the two brothers The younger brother is instantly knocked unconscious by a stock pot to the back of the head dealt by an impatient Sakamoto, who then proceeds to completely break Son-hee's ultra-hard chakram with a mere frying pan. At this point, completely out of his league, Son-hee decides it's a better idea to say screw this fight and lunges directly at Lu to finish the job. But unluckily for Son-hee, he's not even safe inside of his own head. Shin the clairvoyant heard his plan loud and clear, and with a rope around the neck from behind, throws the serial killer over his shoulder onto the ground, where Sakamoto is able to deliver a final blow by hard planting a fully stocked refrigerator directly onto Son-hee's torso. Even Lu Xiaotang is at a complete loss for words, unable to process that these two terrifying monsters from her homeland were easily dispatched by two strange shopkeepers. But you don't always get to pick your friends. As Lu Xiaotang and her new allies arrive so she can get her revenge, even she herself begins to embody the lessons and teachings of the Sakamoto family without even knowing it. Just from being around the humble shopkeepers for one day, a connection was formed that could bring about more happiness than any senseless killing ever could. Opening up her family's treasure and discovering a special bottle of sake that her family was saving for when she finally comes of age, she instead chooses to share the riches of this gift from her family with the ordinary, everyday people she met by chance that saved her life. And the next day, just like Shin before, Lu shows up ready to work at Sakamoto's convenience, choosing to stay in this foreign land with people that were able to extend a similar, comfortable, caring feeling, something she hadn't felt since her late parents. With an understanding of the importance of family itself, Sakamoto is more than willing to open his arms to the broken and lost. In return, if the opportunity should ever arise, both Shin and Lu would have surely promised themselves to protect this newfound family with that very same fire and intensity. And once again, just like before, these two may have to make good on that promise a lot sooner than they think. So after the events of last video, we learned all about Taro Sakamoto and how despite being out of shape, he is far from falling out of grace and losing his title as world's greatest hitman. We were also introduced to the Sakamoto family rules and Aoi, Sakamoto's wife's strict no unaliving policy. After multiple events unfolded in the normally quiet neighborhood Sakamoto's convenience finds itself in, the Sakamoto family also grew in size by 2, with its newest members, Shin Asakura and Lu Xiaotang. Shin, a low-level ex-assassin with supernatural clairvoyant powers that allow him to read minds, and Lu, the daughter of a Chinese triad family that was Itachi Uchiha'd in the last arc. Both Shin and Lu were faced with dangerous trials that tested their character, but each of them ended up in one way or another crossing paths with Mr. Sakamoto, the two of them choosing to take a job at Sakamoto's convenience and work to pay back the man who basically gave them a second chance at life. And in this arc, they definitely each have their chances to prove their dedication to Sakamoto and his family. But more on that later. More importantly, one thing that's harped on throughout this entire arc is despite Shin and Lu's almost immediate kinship with Mr. Sakamoto, they kind of can't stand each other. Lu shows up late all the time. Shin, the mind reader, is completely invasive. The two of them are polar opposites, and it honestly creates a hostile work environment between the family. Sure hope that won't cause any issues down the line. Anyway, Sakamoto Days starts as a small story in an uninteresting town. While average hijinks are what we're used to, we just recently took on our first threat last arc, and Sakamoto dropped a fridge on that guy. There have always been whispers of a more dangerous underworld of assassins lying in wait, the exact environment Sakamoto tried to escape when he started his family. Since Sakamoto stepped out of line to rescue both Shin and Lu, it seems that very underworld has taken these transgressions as Sakamoto coming out of retirement. The ripples made by Sakamoto and his new family have already reached far and wide, spreading to ears of old friends and old enemies. Here to introduce us to this underworld is a brand new character, a shapeshifter assassin with supernatural powers like Shin. After infiltrating the convenience store quite easily and frankly showing just how fucked they all are if Sakamoto just decides to take a day off, we get to meet another one of Sakamoto's former co-workers, a hitman from the shadowy organization Sakamoto used to be a part of, known only as the Order. The man's name is Nagumo, an absolute enigma, fitting for someone who can literally change how they look. Nagumo is a casual liar and someone who seems to have no real sense of danger. He just came by to poke fun though. He actually doesn't mean any harm. Nagumo's only here to say goodbye. Like a bomb, he drops the news that Taro Sakamoto has a 1 billion yen bounty placed on his head. The proof is in the pizza. No, actually, his pizza guy turns out to be one of the hired assassins and tries to take Nagumo hostage. It's here we learn 3 things. 1, this pizza guy was just the beginning, and he was only an amateur. Once word of the hit spreads further, even higher level assassins are gonna start hunting Sakamoto down. 2, despite being massively powerful and frankly polite enough to let Shin and Lu really think this rope was doing anything against him, Nagumo and the Order truly do mean us no harm, for now at least, but they're not exactly gonna help us out either. And 3, despite just being an offhanded joke, Nagumo does raise a brilliant point during their conversation. Does Sakamoto really think he's going to be able to fight the assassins at the top with such a ridiculous rule like a no killing clause? A reasonable question, especially from someone who just waltzed in and definitely could have created much more of a problem on his own if he really wanted to. As Nagumo makes his leave, the Sakamoto family is left to digest that hard news, making one final attempt to threaten the hitmen that are coming after him. If you continue to come after me, get ready to see hell. If what Nagumo said was true, it would probably be best if the whole family laid low for a while, trying to uncover where this hit originated from and hiding. Just play along with family routine, and Aoi and Hana don't even have to know or worry. Perfect time to find out. We have a whole ass trip to the wide open and very public amusement park with the entire fam and child tomorrow. Wonderful. No matter how much fun and joy that appear on his wife and daughter's faces, Sakamoto cannot help but be on edge. What a terrible time for his entire family to be out in the open. Even though this should be a great moment to enjoy with his daughter, how can you focus when you have a giant target on your back? However, this is where Shin and Lu, his humble employees, come in. One of the best things about the Sugar Park arc is how regardless of their differences, both Shin and Lu are able to set them aside, focusing on keeping the day running smoothly and safe for everyone. Shin using his clairvoyance to read the minds of anyone who enters a 20-meter radius, and Lu able to distract Hana and hide the dispatched hitmen after their failed attempts. Even as those higher level assassins begin to rear their heads, the newest members of the Sakamoto family are more than willing to put their lives on the line for their new friends. Ending up on a roller coaster ride with one of those stronger enemies, after bullets are fired into Sakamoto's convenient ass bulletproof glasses, Shin sees no choice but to release his safety bar and use the upcoming loop-de-loop for his chance to pounce on the enemy. It's here where I want to get off topic a bit and discuss why Sakamoto Days is truly such a gem. The greatest shit this manga has to offer is the fucking choreography. I cannot stroke Sakamoto Days off more for its fight scenes. Quite frankly, battles of such level quality put this series above a lot of other parallel running series in Jump right now. Just this small scuffle alone between Shin and some random NPC assassin can hold so much gravity, even being such a low stakes tutorial level battle. Author Yuto Suzuki accomplishes this by making the environment around the characters feel a part of every fight. After yoinking his enemy out of his seat and onto the track, the roller coaster almost runs Shin over on its way back around. It's the reason the toxin assassin is able to catch Shin off guard and graze him with a poison dagger, nearly blinding him, and it's also able to give Shin an advantage when it comes back around the second time, letting him jump onto the back of the seat and use the speed to propel himself forward and charge the enemy. They're then thrown off into a stage show somewhere else in the carnival, not neglecting a single aspect of the environment this fight takes place in. It's impossible to ignore the masterpieces that are Yuto Suzuki's fight designs and concepts. The different ways, locations, and even weapons are used keep every battle unpredictable and very cool to look at. I could make an entire video on Sakamoto Days fight choreography, but I digress. Before Shin and Hitman 46 are derailed from the coaster, touched on something he caught when he looked into Sakamoto's eyes. He noticed fear. More specifically, he saw the fear of death inside his eyes. To a cold-hearted assassin like him, it appears Sakamoto has already lost, if that's the case. If you're not afraid to lose at all, you'll make mistakes, never again reaching your peak. But the beautiful moment here is looking at this from Shin's perspective, having an opportunity to look back at everything Shin once was. A man who almost shit his pants from having a nice home-cooked meal and couldn't understand why Sakamoto would give up being the best for such a simple life either. Now having seen things from the other side, what having a great family and love in your heart can do for someone. With a forever changed outlook on life, Shin calls the poison enemy a dumbass, essentially staring his previous life in the face and cursing it. As Shin prepares to go to war with the toxin assassin, he confirms his newfound beliefs. People who fight with something to lose are always stronger, which Shin proves in this very fight, stepping out of backstage inside a bunny suit to hide his identity with even stronger resolve. Shin claims he can see much better now. His enemy is confused. Shin should still be blinded by poison, but he catches that fist pretty damn accurately though. Somehow, even trying to fight this blind bunny with a knife advantage, he is getting completely worked by Shin. This time, Shin isn't just fighting under orders. He's fighting because he wants to, because he has something to protect. Right before the poison assassin's defeat, with one last knife slash, a clean cut on Shin's costume reveals his eyes were closed the whole time. The entire fight, Shin was blinded by the poison, just like the assassin thought, but what he didn't count on was Mr. Sakamoto being in the crowd, feeding every single move to Shin from afar with his clairvoyance. Like I said before, putting his full trust and life in Sakamoto's hands to accomplish victory and protect what matters most, family. After capturing the assassin, Lu, reminding everyone that she is former Triad, stabs the man with his own poison dagger and threatens to spill every drop of the antidote until he talks. carry. We find out an organization named Dondenkai Limited is who initially put the request out for jobs on Sakamoto, but Poison Assassin doesn't have any loyalty to the company. He's just a paid mercenary for hire. Here is the perfect time to explain the JAA, otherwise known as the Japanese Association of Assassins, a professional organization of hitmen requiring an official license and certification. All hit requests placed on the black market are streamlined through the JAA and divvied out to appropriate members. It's basically how the assassin underworld is able to moderate crime efficiently and keep radicals from going rogue. You also get this cool membership card, but unfortunately, the day of fun isn't over yet. As the Toxin Assassin attempts to make his leave, two newer assassins arrive on the scene and take his place, both sporting a much higher power level than before based on how easily they dispatch Poison Boy, apparently responsible for slaughtering over 200 people at an event called the Ronrico Incident. Now on the case are the #1 duo of the entire Dondenkai, Ant and Boiled, both insanely powerful assassins. Ant is an older woman known for enjoying the thrill of fighting and easily falling for other strong brawlers like herself, whereas Boiled, a much more hardened and melodramatic assassin, is another co-worker from Sakamoto's past who was looking to take revenge for what Sakamoto did to him. Growing up with Sakamoto in the early assassin school days, has beef with Sakamoto and plans to go, as he calls it, hard boiled on him. Back in their teenage years, Boiled was actually Sakamoto's senior. The naturally talkative, overdramatic, and self-centered man took a liking to Sakamoto because of his reputation as being a strong guy. Much like Boiled himself, Sakamoto was hard-boiled. Thinking they had a lot in common, Boiled would follow Sakamoto around and act as if they were cool and aloof together. But he came to find out Sakamoto never even knew this fucking guy existed. And that's embarrassing. Since that day, Boiled has felt betrayed, thinking Sakamoto was a big fat phony, so he has since sworn vengeance. Meanwhile, Sakamoto and fam decided to end their day at Sugar Park with the haunted house. But because of the zombie theme and overall dark atmosphere, it's easy for assassins to sneak up on them, despite Shin and Sakamoto doing their best to keep them at bay. I would say that Lou is helping, but she's too busy getting absolutely wasted to numb her fear of haunted houses. You know, so she can help out. After fearlessly whipping open a door to another herd of zombies, the mass confusion leaves the perfect opening for both Boiled and Ants to make their moves. Boiled delivers a massive sucker punch to Mr. Sakamoto, while Ants distracts Shin and Lou. Sakamoto quickly counters though, reopening the scar on Boiled's face. If it wasn't about him earlier, it definitely is now. The two get ready to square off, but on the other side of the situation, as Shin comes under threat, a drunken Lou launches her foot right into Ant's face. And as the stage is set for that one-on-one, finally, Lu Xiaotang is given her moment to shine and show her will to fight for the Sakamoto family. As the two battles get underway, Boiled tries to hide his tears at the fact Sakamoto still doesn't remember him, despite the fact that Boiled is an opponent Sakamoto could have easily smoked in his prime. Not only is rust getting in the way, but Boiled has grown in the last 5 years to become a large problem. His entire fighting style revolving around the use of small bombs and a dynamite fist gauntlet. Sakamoto was a fool to think the assassin world would stay stagnant in his absence. Boiled continues impressively using his weapons to overwhelm Sakamoto, even if he is super corny about it. The desire to protect his family not being enough, Sakamoto truly has lost his edge, and this battle against Boiled proves it. Once being someone that Boiled looked up to and idolized, Sakamoto now can't even land a single attack on him. How is he supposed to protect his family if he's so quote-unquote half-assed? With Mr. Sakamoto seemingly defeated, Boiled lights up his mission accomplished cigarette. But suddenly, a familiar presence shifts the momentum in the air. A murderous intent puts pressure on Boiled as he hears the entire composition of his bomb technique read out loud to him from behind. As memories come rushing back and that rust starts shaking off, Taro Sakamoto, having shed all his weight like before, has returned to prime form. Turns out Sakamoto does remember Boiled, but it also turns out Sakamoto isn't going to be holding back anymore either. Once again, we're shown this interesting transformation that allows Sakamoto to temporarily regain his peak strength. It's also been established that Sakamoto himself isn't even quite sure what it is or where it comes from. However, in crucial moments like this, where Sakamoto truly needs to give the fight everything he has, Taro Sakamoto, for some reason, can dip back into this power and return to tip-top shape in order to save those closest to him. But I'll talk more about this later on. As Boiled and Sakamoto get serious, Lou is doing her best with her drunken fist style to keep Ant's attention on her. But the downsides of the drunken fist are, well, you're fucking drunk. She just shakes her head so much she has to projectile afterwards. Ant's feeling like if it's gonna be this easy, she might as well take her time and play with her food. So while Lou is sick on the ground, Ant's has Shin tied up to a table, and a man with a chainsaw threatens to cut him in half. Yes, that did escalate quickly. The rules of Ant's little game are as follows. If Lou can't manage to have an attack make contact every 10 seconds, then her henchmen will cut Shin in two. But this morbid-ass game can't really have much of an impact when this drunk bitch is on the floor crying about not being able to help. All jokes aside, as Lou's drunken fist style switches emotions from confident to sad to jolly to angry, she does begin to hold her own in this fight. But what is truly remarkable, even when wasted beyond belief, as Ants commands her that the two of them fight to the death, Lou proudly declines. That's against her family rules, and the people that she's fighting to protect right now, all of them, including Shin, are her family. Blood relation or not, the mundane joys they share each and every day are the strings that bind them together. With that kind of strength behind your punches, how could you lose? Cutting back to Sakamoto and Boiled, now that Sakamoto is ready to fight for real after his transformation, things immediately begin to heat up. With amplified speed and attack power, in just one punch, Sakamoto is able to pack more strength than all of Boiled's bombs put together, cracking this man through the wall. It's Boiled this time that's getting perception blitzed. As his consciousness begins to fade, their power levels have once again grown apart to such a degree, Boiled can't help but acknowledge he was wrong about Sakamoto. Literally catching Boiled's bombs between his fingers, Sakamoto then uses them to create an explosive punch to the jaw. Boiled wonders to himself how Sakamoto could still be this strong after all these years of retirement. And Sakamoto, who finally is acknowledging Boiled's existence, offers him the exact same lesson Shin explained in his earlier scrap. Nothing can stop the power of someone that's using it to protect their family. After crash landing into a Ferris wheel from the massive attack, Boiled barely hanging on to any signs of life and finally being noticed by his senpai, stands corrected. Sakamoto truly is, and always was, hard-boiled. Having made amends with Boiled, and Lou and Ants gaining mutual respect as well, the beaten and bloodied Sakamoto makes his way back to his family that, conveniently, was sleeping this entire time. Boiled declares out loud for everyone to hear his promise to stop making any assassination attempts on Sakamoto's life, right in front of his wife. Yup, all that work to keep everything hidden, for nothing. Boiled ruined it right at the end. All three of them are sat down at the table like it's fucking grade school, and Aoi demands to know absolutely everything about the Dondenkai hit immediately. No more secrets. With this full explanation though, the worst news that we feared is confirmed. Even though Boiled and Ants won't be bothering Sakamoto anymore, they don't have any power in stopping Dondenkai from hiring anyone else. Aoi doesn't want to hear any of this nonsense though. Sakamoto is just gonna have to take care of the problem, and that's that. And with that subtle exchange of looks, a telepathic message formed out of a long and healthy relationship that Mr. Sakamoto and his wife share, Taro knows exactly what Aoi means by take care of it. Sakamoto was just given full permission to get the bounty lifted. And by permission, I mean committing a full-scale assault on Dondenkai's main headquarters. After a thrilling day at the amusement park, with a new mission to confront the Dondenkai organization head-on, the story of Sakamoto Days is only just beginning to unravel, with both Shin and Lou having their chance to prove their devotion to the Sakamoto family rules, while also starting to actually see their new friends as their own kin, risking their lives to ensure not only everyone is kept safe, but both Aoi and Hana, the diamond jewels of the Sakamoto family, are happy, as the hitmen that continue to hunt Sakamoto grow in power. The undeniable fact that was touched on multiple times in this arc is this: will Sakamoto truly be able to keep his family safe if he is constantly limiting his capabilities? Is this new thin transformation enough power? And just what is this order organization both Sakamoto and Nagumo belong to, and what do they want in the long term? After seeing just how powerful Nagumo is, it's terrifying to think if one of these guys were to be the assassins coming after Sakamoto. And And with the level that everyone is at right now, is any of that enough? With the level of assassins attacking the Sakamoto family growing, and the secret behind the bounty on Sakamoto's head no longer hidden from his wife, our characters have nowhere else to go after the events in Sugar Park but straight to the boss of the organization responsible, the Don Denkai. Having defeated both Boiled and Ants, the high-ranking officers sent after them, our heroes prepare for whatever dangers may come next. With both Lu and Shin, although still like oil and water in some aspects, much more dedicated to the family unit now, Sakamoto entrusts them to accompany him on this mission to infiltrate the Dondenkai headquarters. Taro Sakamoto makes his way to a shady video rental location in order to gain information the only way assassins know how. Through perfectly filmed, plotline adapted, and deep character written cinemas revealing all possible knowledge about anything you could ever possibly need to know about the assassin world. Convenient. After gaining all the intel required, Sakamoto and his employees prepare to infiltrate the Dondenkai and put a stop to all this bounty nonsense, doing the best they can to avoid more bloodshed. Cause, you know, no killing and all. The infiltration of Dondenkai headquarters proves to be no problem at all. Shin, Taro, and Lu dispatching multiple officers and making their way up the quote-unquote heavily guarded elevator, only needing to shock one single unlucky and also definitely underpaid entry-level worker. The guy watching the cameras is put to sleep. Things are looking pretty good so far. Too good. As they approach the boss's floor, the situation does get even weirder. But once they enter that room, the answer as to why immediately makes their stomachs drop. Oh shit, it's Nagumo. Nagumo is from the Order, and if you don't remember from the last video, we get a much more in-depth look into them in this arc. The elite killing squad of the assassin world, they are a special force within the Japanese Association of Assassins that are tasked specifically with maintaining, unironically, the order in the assassin underworld. The hitmen in this group are some of the most lethal and powerful people on this whole planet, all of different shades and personalities, willing to take the life of others for simply adding onions to risotto, or even attack each other if they feel like they're lying. Heck, they can't even get all of these guys to show up to an official get-together. We get a small glimpse into some of the characters currently holding positions in the group besides Nagumo, but we'll definitely be finding out more about them as the story unfolds. It simply just goes to show, when you have selfish psychopaths all working under one roof, work conditions can definitely get a little hostile. However, when a killer starts running around causing more trouble than them, well, that is cause for concern. Bringing us all back to Nagumo being here in the first place, with everyone rightfully confused, Nagumo looks emotionlessly at the group, admitting coldly he's the one who slaughtered all these people, and unfortunately, Sakamoto and the fam are next. Before any of them can react, Nagumo is just gone. Moving so fast you could blink and miss it. Nagumo grabs Shin and swings behind him, a knife aimed up and stabbed directly into his throat. And it was just a prank. Nagumo was fucking with them after justifiably beating the shit out of him. Nagumo reveals the real reason why he's here. Surprisingly enough, it wasn't Nagumo that dealt any of the killing blows. They were all finished by the time he got here. It's actually why they were all taken out that Nagumo is investigating, as this isn't the only large organization of hitmen that's been wiped out over the last couple of months. In fact, over 30 of them have been dismantled, all by one singular person. Normally, the assassin world is pretty cutthroat, no pun intended, and civil wars aren't exactly uncommon. However, for over 100 professional assassins to all be taken out with the exact same calling card left in their wake, an X, has led the Order and everyone familiar with the case to start referring to the perpetrator by his calling card. Sakamoto and his family, despite still attempting to keep their noses out of the assassin world, can't just ignore this. And despite seemingly having nothing to do with Sakamoto, the mass slaughter of assassins all started around the same time as Sakamoto's bounty was cast, almost guaranteeing the two's involvement. Forced right back into square one with no leads and hitmen still coming day by day to make assaults on the convenience store, Sakamoto and family have no choice but to do their best to train and prepare for whatever real threats may come. And rest assured, real threats are definitely coming. In the meantime of any serious events taking place, Sakamoto, Shin, and Lu all play their part in the convenience store while at the same time doing their best to train and hone their skills, all the while handling the random occurrences of day-to-day life and never-ending third-rate assassins showing up to claim Sakamoto's head. Although they're not all third-rate. Some of them are actually S-tier snipers that are just unaware of how great they actually are. Meet Heisuke Mashimo, a renegade assassin who, after graduating from assassin school, was unable to find a true home to call his own in the hitman world. Finding a hard time excelling in anything other than marksmanship, his whole life, everyone told Heisuke he would never amount to anything if all he was a good shot. Well, everyone except Pisuke, his pet parrot. He thinks Heisuke is pretty fucking cool. Unlike most assassins, Heisuke is defeated upon first introductions without even a fight, as he instantly proves the whole only good at one thing trope by proving he's not even smart enough to realize Taro Sakamoto is standing right in front of him, because he can't tell the difference between fat and skinny Sakamoto. So he gets fooled into leaving the shop. He's so cute. Later, when Heisuke finds Sakamoto and Shin in a paint gun competition, they actually join teams. Again, Heisuke being too dense to realize this Sakamoto is the Taro Sakamoto he's hunting for. After some usual shenanigans and a drunken Lu shatters the illusion for everybody, Heisuke, Shin, and Sakamoto get into an awesome 2v1 gunfight that is just amazing to read through. Although Heisuke isn't the brightest bulb in the box, he proves the title "Good Shot" is just an understatement, ricocheting bullets and actually putting Sakamoto and Shin onto the defensive, all completely and beautifully put together by Yuto Suzuki's choreography. Pisuke the parrot acts as a long-range mirror and allows Heisuke the perfect sight around angles and corners, and using his special bullets, the marksman might even be better than Sakamoto, but he lacks self-confidence, out loud admitting his low self-esteem on the microphone, to where good guy Shin and Sakamoto hear him say it, both of them acknowledging Heisuke's ability, and that's just enough for them to become friends. Also, Sakamoto just completely obliterates Heisuke's rifle from a mile away with just a fucking rock, so yeah, Sakamoto's perfect marksman record still intact. Now a reoccurring character, Heisuke returns to the convenience shop as a regular. Regular freeloader is more like it, but thankfully so, as Heisuke, our new main character, is the one who walks in and starts the plot for the beginning of our next arc. Enter scene left. Taro Sakamoto convenience store. The relationship problems between Shin and Lu are coming to a head again, as the two's bickering becomes too much for either of them to handle. Friends have argued before, but what makes it that much harder than an average friendship is that Shin is a telepath. I mean, imagine you got into an argument with your mom, and she heard that comeback you didn't say, but only thought. It's almost impossible for anyone to have a private thought around Shin, considering he's almost always listening. And Lu, rightfully angry she can't have solace in her own mind when Shin might go a bit too far, she says something she shouldn't, and admits whenever she's around him, she can't feel comfortable. This seems to strike a nerve in Shin, so much so that instead of the normal bickering back and forth, he actually chooses to walk away, something even the dim-witted Heisuke acknowledges is unusual behavior. After Shin leaves and some time passes, I guess Lu comes to that same conclusion, realizing she might have said something she shouldn't have. She's not going to apologize to him, of course. Fuck that, but Lu will just be a little bit nicer to him for the rest of the day when Shin comes back. However, the next people to walk through the door is, for some reason, a group of 5 random astronauts who all take one look at Lu's apron, which I didn't explain before, but she's wearing Shin's apron with his name tag, part of the reason why their argument started in the first place. But these guys don't question that whatsoever and kidnap Lu, assuming she's Shin, throw her in a van, refuse to elaborate, and the arc begins. Now stuffed inside the back of a vehicle with a bunch of astronauts packed inside, despite Lu clearly looking nothing like the picture they were given for their target, even going far as to acknowledge not only is the hair color different, but the gender is wrong. The only person with any little sense is the guy driving right now, because he's the first person to straight up ask, "Hey, you guys realize this definitely is not the kid we were supposed to take, right?" The insecure upper management astronaut shouts with confidence, "Bro, her name tag literally says Shin. How much more right could I be?" This guy must be a YouTube commenter. At this point, the reason the astronauts have taken Shin is unsure, but it seems like they don't even know why either. Meanwhile, as the real Shin comes back to the convenience store and notices all this broken glass, he also comes to notice there's an entire Chinese woman missing from behind the counter. Sakamoto and fam also return from Hana's school orientation just in time, and after a short explanation, the two of them are off to go rescue their coworker. Now, don't think about this too much, but thankfully, Sakamoto has GPS trackers installed into every employee's name tag. So, thankfully, they can easily locate Lu. And conveniently enough, we have a motorcycle stashed away for just a cool car chase occasion like this. Meanwhile, the Ginyu Force has finally realized their dumbasses kidnapped the wrong person, as Lu reveals her true name and breaks one of their dumb unnecessary helmets, because frankly, I'm not even sure if it's ever elaborated why they're in costume. Now rightfully realizing someone will probably come looking for the random person they just kidnapped, the two astronauts up front begin inhaling that sweet, sweet copium, thinking they can pass off the whole wrong kid as their correct kidnapping victim. But from the rear view mirror, they have the perfect opportunity to catch Sakamoto's awesome motorcycle jump on his way to cook their asses. Crash landing next to the standard issued child napping van, the astronauts realize this is the real Shin they were meant to kidnap and respond with action. Conveniently, they all have their own little mini bikes and just start hopping out of the van one by one like it's a clown car. Sakamoto and Shin dispose of the lackeys pretty quickly though, Sakamoto kicking one of them over and Shin sticking a piece of wood from a nearby Good Samaritan into the other's wheel. Sakamoto just spins around in a 180 and straight up breaks this man's skull with a motorcycle wheel, so I guess we're just reaching Batman levels of quote-unquote no killing here. But Shin lands on top of the astronaut's van with a slam, demanding Lu's safe return. As the upper management astronaut panics, the only competent one takes center stage, hopping on top of the van and dropping his clown clothes as he reveals himself to be named Siba. He reveals a suit that makes him completely invisible, and in any other series this would probably be pretty lame, but tell that to Shin, because Siba clotheslines his ass onto another nearby car as all of his attacks are completely unseen. The only reason Sakamoto can even tell he's Siba's next target is because a heavy weight suddenly hits the front of his motorbike and grabs Sakamoto's wrist. Thankfully, Sakamoto's assassin instincts respond by choking Siba out, and because Sakamoto's firmly grasping his neck, Siba pops a hole in his fuel tank, rigging it to explode. Both Sakamoto and Shin survive this encounter, but Siba was still able to destroy all their means of tailing them, so they still escape with Lu. Shin reveals through context clues he probably does know where they're taking her though. An old research lab posing as a science museum. Surprisingly, it's actually the place where Shin was raised, and more importantly, where he awakened his supernatural powers, which might explain why they're after him. Back at Sakamoto's shop, the newly recruited Heisuke stumbles upon Hana, Sakamoto's daughter, upset because everyone's gone, and in order to cheer her up, he promises to go find them and bring them home. And frankly, as Sakamoto and Shin approach the giant faux museum, as much as they don't already know it, they could definitely use that extra help for what's in store for them. We left off in the last chapter of Sakamoto Days, with our heroes stranded after participating in a car chase to save one of the Sakamoto family members, Lu, from a group of astronaut costume-wearing scientists that are trying to hurt Shin and research his clairvoyance. Why did they kidnap Lu and not Shin? Don't ask me, just make sure to watch the previous video if you haven't. Thank you so much for clicking on this content as always, and let's get back into the action of the Okutabi Lab Arc. Upon entering the museum, Shin and Sakamoto legally buy their tickets to this criminal front for an establishment, and after first stopping for dinosaur cosplay pictures, the two stumble upon a lab worker in normal clown cosplay, who I guess is too dumb to work down below, but still qualified enough for the scientist suit. It's unclear what this is even for again. After a short interrogation and completing a Resident Evil puzzle, they're able to discover the elevator, which, in proper fashion, ends up being secondary booby trap, as out of the bear's mouth comes a fucking Tommy gun that starts firing off rounds. Sakamoto does bring its head down to the knee of the Lord before Shin impales it on cue with a nearby spear. But despite the system being damaged, it sparks up again, beginning to reactivate the security system. And the two of them are way too prepared to fight this cyborg bear, as if this isn't an unusual thing to have going on in your average day. Back down in the lab our heroes are currently trying to break into, the two astronauts have finally arrived with Lou, hoping they can convince their boss that this is actually the clairvoyant boy they've been looking for. And I mean, this upper management man is sweating. Revealed is a man with a deer head in a wrinkled suit standing before them, hands in pockets, sternly asking the upper management man if this is truly Shin, because I'm gonna be honest, this literally does not even look like the person I was looking for. Like, not by a long shot, my guy. But despite this, even with Mr. Reindeer threatening his life, upper management guy doubles down. And without even batting an eye, his homie Siba just rats him out. Invisible man, invisible motives. Some G shit right there. Move in silence. Siba thinks he actually knows how to catch the real Shin, and Mr. Reindeer is much more interested to hear about that, as both Lou and the loser who was too stupid to realize no one was falling for that plan are carted away to the dungeons. Another development happening in the background are two previously introduced Order members, Shishiba and Osaragi, arriving on the scene as well. It seems like the Order is on to the same thought Lou, as she's imprisoned, is starting to piece together. Ultimately, that this entire operation ties back into the person running around killing assassins, X. Osaragi and Shishiba are here to investigate that claim, and maybe stir the pot a little bit, adding more to the chaos already unfolding. Each of these Order members, including the newly introduced pair of hitmen on the Okutabi Lab job, are assumed to be at Sakamoto's level, if not potentially even higher, considering Sakamoto's long been out of shape. Their inclusion to the plot is a wild card. Even Nagumo himself exists as an enigma. Are they allies? Are they enemies? It's too much to think about right now. After taking down the security bear, Shin and Sakamoto prepare to descend down into the lab, when suddenly the ante is upped. The next incoming challenger is Security T-Rex. And that's why it's dangerous to learn, folks. Stay away from museums. Knowledge is dangerous. Even though Sakamoto seems ready for the worst, even just a tail whip from the giant beast creates a large crater in the ground. And despite Shin being in shock they're literally fighting a fucking dinosaur right now, Sakamoto's much more concerned about taking the living, moving dinosaur model back home for his daughter. Always on the mind. Very wholesome, as Mr. Rex winds up for another colossal tail strike, which even Shin notes is a pretty agile move for a statue made of bones. He notices there's an electrical device in its mouth, and with that in mind, Sakamoto charges forward with his taser gun, patting Shin on the head telepathically for his good idea. Sakamoto dodges an attack and shoots an electrical bullet, marking the fossil no problem. However, this only serves to increase the T-Rex's power level, making it thrash about in an outrage, backfiring and striking a huge blow on Mr. Sakamoto. Now disarmed, the dinosaur makes its way for the kill, but Sakamoto is truly only upset he couldn't keep the dinosaur in one piece as he turns on his serious mode. Sakamoto said fuck the gun and picks up his fist, shattering the T-Rex's jaw before knocking it clean against the side of the wall, delivering the finishing blow like an axe to the neck, standing atop his prey as if he was always in control the entire time. After canonically proving he can take out dinosaurs, with all security measures dispatched, Sakamoto and Shin finally make their way down into the basement lab, arriving just in time to save a group of hostages being forced to experiment against their will. Again, no way these people aren't dying, Before Shin and the scientists he knew as a child can enjoy their reunion, they're interrupted by a crazy-looking motherfucker. It was explained to us by the hostages that the basement lab is controlled by this reindeer, real name Kashima. And Kashima leads this operation with his other strong bosses, who each command a floor of this lab, as if this was like the raid or some shit. And Mad Scientist Dude is one of these bosses. As Sakamoto and Shin try to hide, the hostages are terrible at lying. And they also forgot to hide all the unconscious astronaut bodies, so the jig was up real quick. The mad scientist begins his Joker bit, stabbing people with pens and everything, but before he can do more damage, Shin one-ups him by rocketing a pen like a dart and just barely missing that scientist's head by an inch. Comedically, Sakamoto is stuck in a locker right now, so only Shin and the scientist are left to size each other up, who shows his true agility and blinks away, instantly stabbing Shin in the neck from behind before he can even react. Now injected with some foreign chemical, at the click of a button on the scientist's wrists, Shin's brain inverts, making him only able to talk in reverse for the duration of the fight. Random, but okay. The mad scientist thinks he's already won and opts to use the next stage of his plan. But Sakamoto is finally free to deck him right between the eyes, blitzing out of the locker just in time. Now showing clear signs of damage, the mad scientist picks himself up. But the doctor snickers and acknowledges the legendary hitman, quote unquote, for what he is. Washed up. So out of shape, even a weakling like him can get the jump on Sakamoto now. And suddenly, just like Shin before him, Sakamoto notices he's been injected. But when Sakamoto goes to finish the fight before anything bad happens, he realizes he just ends up striking Shin. The mad scientist laughs maniacally and is clearly influencing Sakamoto's brain signals with another one of his drugs. After quickly realizing his brain has been rewired to attack friends instead of foes, Sakamoto is a bit quicker on the uptake than Shin and goes for a second punch that actually lands point blank on the scientist. Thinking he's got this figured out now, Sakamoto goes in for a second attack, but the scientist has free control to switch the inversion effect on and off, meaning this actually lands a haymaker on his poor sidekick Shin. Kicking things up a notch, the scientist injects himself now with drugs, his muscles inflating from some kind of steroid, and in an instant, he's striking the ground where Sakamoto and Shin once were. And with both their brains now inverted, they're unable to counterattack. Winding up, the crazy doctor sends Shin crashing through the glass wall beside them. And by making Sakamoto's brain think he's attacking his partner Shin, Sakamoto hesitates, which leaves him wide open for the scientist to counterattack him. As the two of them try to pick themselves back up for a round two, the mad scientist is again already on Shin, stabbing him with multiple injections all at once in his torso. Shin is getting completely overwhelmed in this fight, and the scientist picks up on this, mocking his ability to read minds, claiming that what good is it if he can't move his body in accordance with his precognition. Fully supporting his employee though when he's getting picked on, Sakamoto pulls Shin right back up to his feet, claiming that Shin's powers aren't stupid, and this is their chance to prove it right here, right now. Shin is reinvigorated, but the doctor claims they're unable to understand each other because of their IQ gap. This guy obviously watches Rick and Morty. As the scientist takes more drugs and gears up for the kill, he explodes into a giant monster of muscular mass, feeling nothing but euphoria and pain, ready to demolish both Shin and Sakamoto. Staring danger in the face, Shin asks Mr. Sakamoto what the plan is, but Sakamoto acts as if it's obvious. With the mad scientist on the move, so too is the dynamic duo, taking swift momentum and overwhelming the scientist with a flurry of attacks, blitzing the scientist with a frenzy of pure punches. But because they're telepathically communicating their attacks between each other, Sakamoto and Shin are also dodging accordingly, leaving just the doctor to be the one in the middle, sandwiched and pummeled beyond repair. And proving the strength of their bond, Sakamoto gets that final blow, punching the weirdo far, far away into the dust, proving that not only is clairvoyance a handy power to have, despite being close, Sakamoto has no fucking problem punching multiple holes in Shin if need be. further underground as the higher floors begin to collapse into mutiny with Sakamoto's intrusion, Mr. Reindeer, otherwise known as Kashima, makes his way to the final basement floor and escape. Upset, his plans have crumbled early. Followed by two of his lower level bosses, Basement 3 leader Takamito and Basement 4 Emperor Onigahara. On their way down, in typical order fashion it seems, both Osaragi and Shishiba are waiting for them next to a mountain slide of corpses. Having been happily patient for the big leagues to make their way down here, Osaragi and Shishiba claim it's their fault, because if this place wasn't designed to be so hard to get around, they wouldn't have had to kill all these people to find their way around. Their real objective is X though, the leader of this whole shindig, not some dumb reindeer. Unfortunately, as Kashima admits, X isn't here. But Shishiba is happy to abuse JAA law in order to kill these guys anyway for their supposed treason. But the order is nothing but cocky if they think they can actually take on two floor bosses at the same time? I mean, one was just pressing Sakamoto and Shin. Onigahara and Takamito press Shishiba, intimidating the much shorter hitman. And with Kashima given the call that killing is allowed, Onigahara is the first to make his move with his Doc Ock looking mechanical arms. But before Shishiba can even stop her, Osaragi cleaves right through both floor bosses' throats as if their necks were papered of fresh scissors. A large buzzsaw whipped through the sinews, splattering blood all over Shishiba, who only asked her to hesitate so he could just get out of the way. Despite Osaragi and Shishiba just carrying on with casual conversation, clearly jaded to the amount of death they're responsible for, Kashima starts to tear up. As he takes his comrades' heads into his hands, he grieves over the Order's lack of regard for human life, vowing to exterminate the Order members here and now for not realizing the pain they've wrought across the world. Kashima reveals his true form, a stitched-together amalgamation of weapons and human limbs, exposing a nest of blades beneath one arm before instantaneously darting past Shishiba, inflicting a cut wound across the man's chest and explaining the only way to kill is to kill with purpose. Shishiba takes this hit in stride though, his signature hammer already positioned at the perfect trajectory to pull on Kashima's forehead and twist it a full 180 degrees. A cocky smile cracks into Shishiba's face as he pulls off this one-hit KO, in the same remorseless expression as when Osaragi dispatched those goons. The two Order members are surprised though when the reindeer takes his spun around head and twists it back into place. Apparently artificial down to the bone, even neck snapping is unable to beat Kashima's weaponized and mechanical spine. Right on cue though, Sakamoto's fat ass falls right on top of Kashima, really testing that artificial spine. After everyone was nice enough to compose themselves and even stand on opposite sides, again with the casual attitudes of legends who have never had to worry about any serious threats, Sakamoto and Shishiba catch up like old co-workers. But Kashima, after seeing Sakamoto, calls him the only person to ever injure X, the assassin killer. Much to his confusion, as even Shishiba admits they're not too sure who X even is. So, what kind of relationship could he have with Sakamoto? Regardless, Kashima excitedly praises this opportunity to slaughter Sakamoto and present his corpse to the master, further transforming into machine as guns emerge from his free arm and mouth, similar to the security beast from above. The reindeer wastes no time attempting to jump the legendary assassin, who easily dodges Kashima's first attack. Sakamoto starts to wonder if Kashima is even human at this point, as more extensions come out to grab Sakamoto, charging up a literal fucking laser beam in the cannon in his mouth. And as Sakuma turns looking for, I don't know, maybe some fucking help, Osaragi and Shishiba are already halfway out the door. Sakamoto funnily just waves goodbye and wishes them farewell, just as Kashima blinks behind the retired assassin and slams him into the ground with a giant explosion. Now, despite this being the big bad of the arc, Sakamoto isn't the primetime battle of this story. If you remember, the whole entire kidnapping situation took place because Okutabi Lab was attempting to get a hold of Shin. Everything in this arc ties back to Shin's clairvoyance. And Lu was only kidnapped because the astronauts were stupid. So before we cover Sakamoto and his final fight with Kashima, we should go back to Shin and Lu's perspectives to truly understand the themes on display in this segment of Sakamoto Days. Back in the lab's prison, Lu, maintaining her triad spirit, refuses to give up. Attempting to break out after realizing the upper management scientist she got locked up with is no help whatsoever. Thankfully though, it turns out it's not just them in the cell, as a voice calls out to them, explaining Lu's gonna need a much better plan if she wants to break out of this cell, but he might have it for them. In the shadows sits a man laying in tattered clothes, surrounded by beautiful mind-styled writings etched into the wall behind him. This man is Dr. Asakura, and after popping the handcuffs that were holding him hostage, he formally introduces himself as the former head of the research facility. And after having to explain to Lu before she kills him that him and Mr. Reindeer are on two entirely opposing sides, Lu, Dr. Asakura, and upper management guy hatch a plan of escape. It's further explained to us that although the Science Museum has always been a covert lab operation, the evil experiments didn't really start taking place until about a week ago. Mr. Reindeer and a large number of assassin-type characters showed up and simply took over the place with little resistance. If you didn't agree with their rule, you were locked in a cell, or even worse, killed. Simple as. Which explains why there's such a high level of mutiny going on with Sakamoto and gang coming to shake things up. And after they dropped the bomb on Dr. Asakura that the organization wanted Shin for his clairvoyant powers, we get a small flashback of the past where Asakura was just a young researcher when his old friend, a person named Ando, one day dropped off a young child, asking him to babysit, and then never returned. At first, Dr. Asakura and the child were like oil and water, never getting along. And Asakura cursed his old friend for leaving him behind with the burden of a snot-nosed brat. However, over time, a parental bond formed between Asakura and the newly named child, Shin. They looked out for each other and took care of each other when no one else would. Shin was even one of the only people to show interest in Asakura's side research. And when others made fun of it, Shin defended him. However, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. One night during an intense research session, Shin wandered sleepily into Asakura's lab looking for a cold drink, and while the doctor was frantically preparing an experiment, Shin unknowingly grabbed the vial of liquid Asakura was looking for. And after drinking it, that failed experiment Asakura had been working on turned out to be a success in the worst way possible. At first, thankfully, Shin was just sick. Dr. Asakura literally thought he would die. So as he thinks to himself he's glad the kid survived, Shin just outright responds to Asakura's inside thoughts as if he said them out loud, slowly coming to find out that his experiment did actually work. It turned Shin's brain into a radio for other people's thoughts, at least in a general range around him. And at first, Shin was thrilled with the fruits of Asakura's research, using it for all sorts of things. However, over time, the effects of the experiment began to take a toll on Shin's relationships with people, constantly hearing the thoughts of those who didn't want Shin around for privacy reasons, claiming they never felt comfortable around Shin because he could read their minds. Even one day coming to read Asakura's thoughts of regretting he did this to Shin in the first place, who is truly hurt that everyone finds his powers as such a burden, resulting in him abandoning the lab forever and pursuing the life of an assassin. Coming full circle and harking back to that initial argument Lu and Shin had at the very beginning of this video. Lu yelled and repeated the exact same thing Shin heard that caused him to leave the lab, and realizing she made him feel the same uncomfortable unwelcomeness that Shin dealt with as a child, Lu breaks down, realizing the sadness of the story and the wrongness of her actions. But even through all of this, with what she and Shin have been through, she knows there's no way Shin could hold a grudge against her or even Dr. Asakura. The same way he'll forgive Lu when he comes to rescue her is the same way he'll forgive Dr. Asakura. There's no doubt about it. Now with everybody reinvigorated, Lou, Asakura, an upper management guy who is definitely just along for the ride and not contributing whatsoever, break out of their cell and begin their infiltration mission. Meanwhile, as Team Lou escapes, Shin sprints through basement floor 2 alone in an attempt to reach Lou's prison cell. After a booby trap caused Mr. Sakamoto to fall down a hole in the floor and split them up, explaining how he landed in basement level 5 with the Order and Kashima. In the middle of all these intersecting events, Shin picks up on a presence watching him from afar, darting to the side as some invisible force slams itself onto the floor right next to him. As he slips back, Shin immediately recognizes this tactic. With the jig up, Seba disables the invisible suit and makes himself known. Upset that Shin was able to figure him out, because now that the element of surprise is taken away, it makes Seba's job that much harder. Shin doesn't have time to waste on Seba's bullshit though. He needs to keep Lou safe. But to be honest, Seba hates working overtime. And if there wasn't such a high-priced bonus for Shin's head, he wouldn't even be bothering with a weakling like him. Opting to finish this fast, Seba activates his invisibility suit and starts his assault on Shin. And again, even though the clairvoyant can tell where Seba's striking from reading his thoughts, just like in the mad scientist fight, Shin's body cannot react as fast as his own brain can, meaning the advantage of mind reading ultimately serves him no purpose. More attacks land on Shin's torso, but no killing blows. Seba ensures he won't kill him too early, as even though he hates overtime, clocking out early is a bad look. Shin is consistently on the back foot as the battle continues, but he finally starts to better adapt to his mind reading, slowly getting the hang and dodging Seba's invisible attacks at the very last second. Deciding to not give him enough time to continue adapting, Seba moves in and takes the finishing blow. While Shin is catching his breath, he notices the shadow of a small bird flying overhead. The dagger Seba's been using stabs into Shin's side, still moving too quick for Shin to dodge. But as Shin falls, he takes the last of his strength to wipe a large splatter of blood on Seba's Invisisuit. With what might be his last breath, Shin tells Seba he never misses. And before the Invisible Man can even wonder what Shin is on about, 2 sniper rounds ricochet right through Seba's shoulders and cause critical damage to the now exposed man. And thankfully sending Shin just the right signal he needed, Heisuke appears on the scene, cocking back his rifle for the next shot, more than ready to pay back his debt to his new friend. Seba picks himself back up and takes cover, thinking a sniper is no problem if you know where they are and stay out of their line of sight. And Heisuke wonders if that's truly sound logic, as he fires another bullet and just barely grazes Seba's shoulder, just a hair off this time. In an attempt to throw Heisuke off, Seba goes incognito again, but the #1 sniper can still use his sense of hearing to track Seba, firing off a couple more rounds that completely dismantle the catwalk Seba's running on. And as Seba jumps onto the opposite catwalk, his invisible jacket is, for some reason, nowhere to be seen now. Like, no, not in the normal way you can't see. Wrapping something up and quickly chucking it at Heisuke. Before the sniper could even realize what happened, his torso was pierced all the way through by a large stake of debris. Even though he was looking right at Seba, Heisuke never could have noticed the projectile, as it was wrapped up with a piece of the invisible jacket, cloaking it just enough to make its mark on Heisuke. As Seba pops his jacket back on in style, he stands over the injured Heisuke, stomping on his arm before the sniper can raise his rifle and take another shot. It goes off anyway, much to Seba's confusion, but again Heisuke proves his skills by striking Seba again with a ricochet. This time, it takes his entire fucking arm off, giving Heisuke just enough time to roll back and aim, threatening the incapacitated Seba with a headshot this time. But Seba's trickery never ends. Surprisingly, unknown to everyone that he could even do this, he only partially activated the Invisisuit, meaning something's been hidden up his sleeve. Again, no pun intended. Using his speed, Seba clears enough space to land another critical stab into Heisuke's stomach with the previously thought to be disembodied arm. Planning to just leave Heisuke to bleed out. With one last attempt, Heisuke calls out to his new friend Shin, putting all of his trust into this Sakamoto family. Heisuke's last sniper round, instead of being aimed at Seba, gets fired right into the sprinkler system. And as the water falls like rain, it sets the tone for a depressing end to Heisuke. Seba praises the sniper for how close that last shot really was to hitting him, even though Heisuke couldn't see, clearly not realizing that now with the sprinkler on, he's a sitting fucking duck for that clairvoyant assassin Shin Asakura, who takes Seba's head completely into his leg grip and mollywops Seba right onto the ground so he lands right on the back of his skull, knocking the invisible man out cold, confidently remarking to the now incapacitated Seba that if Shin can see him, there's no challenge at all. Even with what little interactions the two of them had, Shin was able to read Heisuke's intentions, proving again Shin's clairvoyance was able to save the family from certain death. But before Heisuke and Shin can celebrate, suddenly the entire lab starts detonating with explosions. On the other side of the lab, as the two Order members make their escape, Osaragi wonders aloud to Shishiba if it's okay to just leave Sakamoto alone against an opponent like Kashima. Shishiba admits that even though Sakamoto doesn't seem as tough as he used to be, it's just impossible for him to imagine someone like Sakamoto dying. Cut back to their fight, Kashima is growing more and more annoyed that Sakamoto just keeps dodging every attack. He continually fills the fight silence with rants about how his research was meant to propel the assassin world forward, and the Sakamoto family's insolence shouldn't interfere with that. And Sakamoto challenges Kashima, saying that if he truly wanted to accomplish something good, he should have started by taking care of the people close to him. And just as Kashima starts shit-talking about how all of Sakamoto's special friends are probably already dead now anyway, Sakamoto shuts his ass right up by lodging a pen directly into his mouth cannon, causing it to react and explode right in Kashima's face. Sakamoto just can't stand people that underestimate his staff. Kashima talks way too much, and wait a minute, he hates Christmas too? Fuck this guy. It's revealed that the explosions going on throughout the facility are actually stemming from a self-destruct protocol Kashima initiated. In 20 minutes, the entire place will be blown to hell. But Sakamoto calmly just cracks his knuckles with that information, claiming he only needs 5 to completely massacre this reindeer. Round 2 begins with Kashima making the first move, and despite Sakamoto's body not looking very agile, he can still keep up and dodge all of Mr. Reindeer's attacks. Kashima has used all of this lab's research to weaponize 70% of his body, becoming an anomaly of nature, which explains why he's so damn strong and fast. But Sakamoto says he's got weapons too, pulling out of his pockets a half-off coupon sticker, a shop advertisement, and a mechanical pencil. And oh boy, in anyone else's hands, this would be a joke. But as Kashima fires from long range, Sakamoto closes in, flicking fucking pencil lead into my man's eye, ignoring any intrusive thoughts this might give me about how painful it is. Just as Kashima gets comfortable with only having one eye for the fight, Sakamoto covers that last bit of vision with that half-off sticker, slipping behind the blind $1 million man and bonking his ass way back into the wall. He pulls off his belt like dad after he found out you left the bathroom light on, and tells Kashima his reliance on weaponry is the sign of a third-rate assassin. Kashima tries to clap back, saying that if he's a third-rate assassin and Sakamoto can't even beat him, what does that make Sakamoto? And after seeing just how much damage Kashima can take, Sakamoto asks if he's just plain immortal, and the reindeer man admits he himself isn't even aware of what it would take to kill him at this point. Whatever it does take, Kashima will give his entire life and more to serve Master X, the only person in life to ever validate him and make him feel justified in his grief. But before the sob story can really begin, a train comes rushing down the track the two assassins are standing on, forcing them both to jump out of the way. And Kashima reveals another hidden contraption launching mechanical wires to wrap around Sakamoto like a coil. Kashima lands on the train in an attempt to drag Sakamoto's body along the track, but much to his surprise, Sakamoto's just riding that piece of railroad like a surfboard. And after using his sleight of hand to cut through the wire with nothing more than his pure paper advertisement, Sakamoto takes hold of those wires and rips Kashima through the air into the wall of the tunnel. On the other side of the track, another train is doing its business, passing towards its destination, before the two assassins come crashing through the wall next to it, placing them right in front of the train as they're sent flying through the glass and into a speeding passenger car. Their bodies ripple through civilians as inertia attempts to catch up with them. Kashima is the first to compose himself, at this point almost torn to pieces from all the damage he sustained, and like the asshole he is, he steals a passenger's water bottle. Because of all the things his bodily functions still require, he gets thirsty for some reason. Kashima finally begins to acknowledge Sakamoto's strength as the legendary assassin, but now isn't the time to admire. He needs to find out where this unbeatable hitman is hiding. Blindsided and kicked with such ferocity, his mechanical skull almost flattens. Sakamoto can go all out with lethal force now since, he doesn't have to worry about Kashima dying. An old lady comes into the cart, clearly delusional and not realizing the beatdown happening before her, and as Kashima tries to pour his heart out to Sakamoto about his devotion to Master X, the newly thinned and powered up Sakamoto reminds Kashima this is priority seating, before sending this man rocketing for miles to make room for Granny, and for some reason it's just now clicking in Kashima's head how outmatched he is, as Sakamoto walks and presses him up against the wall in this narrowed alley between train carts. Kashima stands there speechless, Sakamoto responding by fixing his glasses and then beating the literal brakes off this man. Oh my god, Granny can't even hear those screams! Kashima is sent smashing through the door to the next train cart, and in one last attempt to Sakamoto's life, he aims up and fires his cannon directly at this force of nature. But Sakamoto deflects every bullet incoming by spinning a fucking handrail, then snapping his wrist to grab a hold of it and poking holes in this machine man like a Capri Sun that just won't fucking open. Seeing no other way out, another unnecessarily large cannon erupts from Kashima's stomach, blasting a huge beam into Sakamoto and the train itself, leaving Kashima to think he's finally rid of the legendary hitman. But that would be too fucking easy. First name Lightning, last name McQueen. Sakamoto is speed, bursting through the entire train and making it in time to break through the back window of train number 2, returning to homeboy on train number 1. Bro was finally just chilling, sat down, catching his breath next to grandma, when the door fucking opens and Sakamoto is just standing there menacingly. Little bro couldn't be more terrified as he screams out in disbelief, claiming Sakamoto stands for nothing, no dreams, no ideals. Why can't Sakamoto understand the world needs people like Kashima to push it forward? And as Sakamoto winds up the final blow, he says he doesn't need any more justification to beat that ass other than this. He wouldn't want some reindeer freak like Kashima anywhere near his family. And in just a quick few blows, Sakamoto completely dismantles Kashima like the vending machine he is. Electrocuting him, paralyzing him, Sakamoto just ends up dragging his ass like the tantrum-throwing child he is out of the train station, following this up by making a phone call to his wife and telling her to wear something pretty tonight. We cut back to Team Lu and Shin as the building starts to really fall apart. Everyone finally ends up meeting up as they attempt to save as many hostages as possible. Shin even makes it just in time to rescue Lu from a boulder about to fall on her from above. Now finally back together after everything that's happened, Lu can't hold back her tears. She apologizes to Shin for what she said, finally understanding the hardship Shin endured as a child and that being a clairvoyant was something he never asked for. But now that Shin has even more confidence in his abilities than ever, he can accept Lu's apology without question, claiming he truly has finally left all of that behind. Shin also has a short, heartfelt reunion with Dr. Asakura, who both are a bit speechless at first, but they're interrupted by Sakamoto, reminding them there's 15 minutes left until the whole place collapses. I guess that means he kept his 5-minute promise to Kashima, by the way. After devising a plan with the layout of the lab and using Shin's clairvoyance to locate hostages, the team springs into action in hopes they can save all the people left inside the lab before destruction. Mr. Asakura is surprised Shin can use his powers so effectively, and without even turning around, Shin responds with the exact same thing he's been saying since way back when he was a child. Don't you see? Your research was useful. Almost in shock, the doctor looks at the new grown man, now in place of that snot-nosed brat he used to know, and he can't help but smile, knowing Shin really was right all along. Meanwhile, in the lowest level of the lab, it turns out both Shishiba and Osaragi were present the entire time. They found their way into the information chambers, and despite having to defend themselves against falling debris, they're finally able to get a good look at the mastermind behind all of this. X, better known by his name now as the assassin killer Slur. Osaragi mentions Slur is tough, but Shishiba happily begins slashing his way out of the room, claiming no one's ever messed with the Order and lived. They're all dead meat now. On the other side of the lab, just as Team Rescue makes their way towards the 2 remaining voices they can hear, suddenly, Shin is stopped in his tracks by a paralyzing aura. Awaiting him at the end of the hallway is a person giving off a killing intent unlike ever before. One of pure horror that fills the air with sudden death. Shin and Dr. Asakura snap out of their fever dream, brought on by the person before them's murderous intent being so strong, it made them imagine their deaths from all the way across the room. Clearly, the one behind this entire show, the mastermind themselves, X. Or rather, now we can call them by their true name, Slur, reveals themselves. They blink their way behind Shin, as both him and Dr. Asakura are crippled with fear. Slur asks Shin if he can give Sakamoto their best before disappearing without a trace. By the time Shin turns around, Slur is gone, like a phantom amongst all this pandemonium. Now outside of the lab, everyone is safe. Shin and Lu were able to save all of the innocent scientists being held hostage, and Sakamoto effectively ran out all the assassins from the now destroyed research lab. Despite all of these good people having to start their careers from scratch, they're just happy to see Shin's grown up and living somewhere he's accepted. Finally hearing all of these good thoughts from the people he once thought hated him, it's almost as if a chapter in Shin's life can finally close. After a long, perilous journey, the Sakamoto family resumes the closest thing to normalcy they possibly can. Although the hit on Sakamoto still remains ongoing, they've gotten closer than ever to finding out who's behind it all. However, the deeper things go, the deadlier they become. Now that the Order's involved, the death toll is only sure to continue rising. And who knows how long a group of assassins with that level of caliber will stay friendly, or if what they even are to us now can be considered such. And with big players like Slur and Mr. Reindeer calling the shots, if the lab was only a small personal project, what exactly could their main goal look like? Kashima was a very philosophical man, spouting nonsense about killing people properly and allowing people with value to run the world. But is that what the main mastermind truly feels as well? As waves in the assassin underworld begin to ripple and those waves crash into the Sakamoto family's life, at least one thing remains constant. Shin and Lu always find a way to fight. In the last video, Sakamoto and his family were able to successfully infiltrate the Okutabi Lab and save Lu from the scientists that kidnapped her. Meeting up with a top member of Slur's gang, Kashima, the group who originally put a bounty on retired Sakamoto's head, Sakamoto defeated Mr. Reindeer and made it home in time for dinner with his wife and daughter. However, no new information on Sakamoto's bounty was discovered. But with the order on high alert now, and the assassin killer slur still out there won't be an end to the troubles plaguing the Sakamoto family until the bounty is cut off from the source. And speaking about the past, coming back to haunt them, an enigmatic figure from Lu's triad history has just landed in Japan with intentions of bringing Lu back to China so she can lead the triads in her father's absence. They attempt to take Lu by force, but after a brief introduction to Sakamoto's game, they realize it's probably better to sit and talk like a civilized human being instead of immediately pulling a gun on a random stranger. The triad member introduces himself as Wu-Tang, and Lu declines the proposal to become the leader of her clan without hesitation. With how much of a bond the Sakamoto crew has formed up till this point, Lu would much rather work as a cashier making minimum wage than be the treasured princess of a lucrative crime family. Surely a relatable life decision. Wu-Tang proposes an old-fashioned parlay, a challenge where if Wu-Tang wins, he brings Lu back home. But if Sakamoto wins, Wu-Tang will provide him with the crucial information on Slur and where the bounty on Sakamoto's head originated. Both Shin and Sakamoto decline, refusing to play with Lu's livelihood like that. But surprisingly, Lu accepts the game, claiming she wants to prove she can put herself on the line to help her new family. The group arrives at an underground casino where the game is to see who can win the most chips in a set amount of time. And even though none of them are experienced gamblers, the Sakamoto family is able to get by on their wits alone. Shin's mind reading puts him at an advantage in poker despite not even knowing how to play, and Sakamoto's sleight of hand easily allows him to cheat in the game of roulette. But up against Wu-Tang, a master card counter in blackjack, the two parties end up in a draw with 87,630 chips each, deciding it best to settle the tie with a more casual game, like Old Maid. The gang isn't so lucky this time around, because not only is Lu proving to be the weakest link in the family, having the absolute worst poker face this side of the Mason-Dixon, when Shin tries to read Wu-Tang's mind, he literally just gets attacked by Gojo's Unlimited Void. This loss can literally only be described as Shin peering into Wu-Tang's mind and getting the brakes beaten off of him by that one gif of that lady lost in thought. On Sakamoto's front, he's also constantly getting caught for cheating, unable to successfully fool Wu-Tang in fear of being disqualified. So with all their handicaps taken away, Wu-Tang is about to win when suddenly the other triad members standing around, who are frustrated with the childish way Wu-Tang is handling what should have been just a cut and dry criminal kidnapping, decide they're gonna mutiny, which I'm not really sure what the thought process was here. Kill everyone and then bring Lu back to China to what? Unwillingly lead an entire criminal enterprise? But, you know, then I remembered that's why they're the lackeys and Wu-Tang is the brains of the operation. It's also why, after just a short flashback for motivation, Wu-Tang is able to somehow convince all of them that their guns were already pre-rigged to explode. They then all drop their guns and immediately put an end to the coup d'etat as the traitors receive the traditional family smackdown from the Sakamotos, proving that whole pen is mightier than the gun analogy. After returning to Sakamoto convenience and making Wu-Tang work part-time to make up for the time lost during his pointless gambling arc, it's revealed that most of what Wu-Tang wanted to offer as information were things we already knew. However, Wu-Tang does have something new to chew on, which is that Slur's signature X symbol was found at the scene of a murder in some random maximum security prison. 4 high-threat inmates were found butchered and burned beyond recognition right in front of it. However, the most peculiar piece of information is that since the prisoners were killed, more and more corpses have turned up using the same methods as the serial killers that have supposedly kicked the bucket. If Wu-Tang was a betting man, and well, we already know that he is, all of this leads to him believing the entire prison slaughter was staged. These 4 prisoners on death row have actually escaped into Japan and are now working for Slur to carry out his dirty work. We're then treated to a proper introduction of all 4 of these inmates who were previously on death row as they await their orders from Slur. Dump, a young woman sentenced to death for killing over 180 people. A psychopath who has fallen in love with the terrified expressions people make right before their death. Dump is quite promiscuous and looks for unsuspecting victims to quote-unquote show her affection to. This, of course, consists of murdering the ones that she fancies, almost always having post-nut clarity afterwards when realizing the victim just really wasn't as cute as she once thought, and simply just got caught in the moment. Dump was sentenced to death for the crimes of armed robbery, murder, and illegal disposal of bodies. Didn't know there was a legal way to do that. Saw is an older bachelor whose narcissistic tendencies and lack of remorse for others has led him to acquire a body count of 64 victims. Unlike the other prisoners, Saw is much more interested in getting to know his targets and understanding how he can hurt them the most. He's much more calculated than the others and more specific with who he chooses to focus on. Saw is fully aware of right and wrong, but chooses to walk the path of violence anyway, enjoying it all the while. Saw was sentenced to death for the crimes of murder, armed robbery, illegal disposal of bodies, and mutilation of corpses. Apart is a young adult male who faced severe trauma as a child. Apart's obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD, is debilitating to the point he gives in to the smallest trigger. Something like a foreign ingredient in a burger, or one missing manga volume in someone's collection can send Apart spiraling. Because of his differences, Apart was never able to truly connect with others. Eventually, being an outcast culminated in the worst possible coping mechanism: murder. Apart is responsible for taking the lives of over 200 victims and was handed the death sentence for the crimes of murder, kidnapping, and the mutilation of bodies. Last but not least, we have Minimalist, a large man with the highest kill count of the group. Minimalist is an impatient, self-serving person. The man kills for pleasure and isn't afraid to eliminate anything, person, or object that gets in his way. Minimalist is so strong, he can crush anything, even a full-grown adult, into a ball of flesh, a testament to his dedication for brutality. Minimalist was sentenced to death for, do you really need a reason, to be honest? Man starts walking around hydraulic pressing people into bowling balls? Without question, I want him off the streets. Guillotines, public execution, I want to know this maniac is gone. Anyway, Mr. Reindeer, barely recovering from the injuries Sakamoto gave him from Okutabi Lab, gives the serial killers a list of targets. People that are all threats to Slur's organization. And, of course, it's revealed that Sakamoto is one of these targets. Surprisingly, even Order members are on the bill, like Nagumo, so Slur's getting bold, planning to use the death row prisoners to tie up any loose ends before making their next move. While most of the prisoners are happy to kill without much need for a reason, Kashima does remind them that if they're not careful, some of these targets might get the best of them. And in response, Minimalist just crushes his food tray, taking offense to Kashima claiming some fat ass like Sakamoto could ever stand up to them. The serial killers will remove all of these threats in less than a month, and if there isn't anything else to do after that, they're just gonna start randomly killing civilians. Kashima thinks about the kind of evil that's being released into the world, consciously recognizing the chaos this group of killers are about to create, but he chooses not to question Slur. After all, it's his fault for losing to Sakamoto anyway. Kashima can't complain about contingencies now. But at the very least, this scene does show Kashima truly meant what he said in the last arc, really believing that Slur's actions will create a better world. It's just, from our point of view, that perspective is really hard to grasp. Cutting back to present time, Wu-Tang warns the gang they're gonna want to leave the country if they want to be safe. These serial killers are not ordinary assassins. They might even be worse. But much to Wu-Tang's surprise, none of the Sakamoto family shares his concern. Not even Shin or Lu bat an eye after everything they've all been through. The only focus is preparing for the attack any way they can. If these serial killers really are that dangerous, they can't just stand idly by and do nothing, right? A sentence that
although only spoken by Sakamoto, can be felt resonating from every member of the trio, showing how these three characters from entirely separate walks of life have all come together in unison to walk as one unit. Taro, Shin, and Lu, heck, even Heisuke, all share the same value in mind, which is making life at the convenience store, and therefore the community around it, safe for everyone involved. At the same time, 5 members of the Order are en route to personally dispose of the released prisoners themselves. The Order already received intel that the inmates are working for Slur, which is more than enough reason to hunt them, let alone the killers are now causing trouble on their territory. Nagumo, as well as Shishiba and Osaragi, who we met in the last arc, are present, but we're also introduced to another core member of the Order named Hyo, as well as an elderly swordsman named Takamura. Hyo is a much more serious straight man to everyone else's eccentric personalities, while the rest of the group wonders if Takamura is actually senile or not. However, not even old age disqualifies an Order member from being lethal, as Takamura displays the ability to almost slice the entire freeway in half merely after getting startled by a fly. With 5 insanely powerful Order members and only 4 unsuspecting serial killers, for a group created to maintain balance, this is the second arc they've acted as pure wildcard types that have the potential to derail the entire situation. And this time, they've brought an actual demon with them. But we'll get back to Takamura and the rest of the Order later. For now, we're shifting back to the main cast, as Taro himself is out training with Heisuke, while Shin and Lu have went to go buy more materials at a nearby shop. In the middle of Sakamoto catching bullets with fucking chopsticks, which is just insane by the way, Nagumo makes a pit stop on his own hunt for the serial killers to visit. Nagumo's smart enough to know once Sakamoto got wind of the situation, he's gonna make plans to fight the killers. And Nagumo was hoping to discourage Sakamoto from doing that, since the Order is already on the case. But even knowing a hit has been put out on the killers, Sakamoto can't stop pursuing these inmates. They've got information on Slur that he needs, and Sakamoto made a promise to his wife to take care of this bounty. However, this time, instead of joking, Nagumo is harshly honest to Sakamoto because they've known each other for so long. Nagumo flashes a copy of the target list given to all 4 of these killers, and Sakamoto is shocked to see his own threat level was only ranked as a B. Meanwhile, active Order members like Nagumo are considered S-rank threats. Now, Nagumo doesn't tell Sakamoto this to brag, well, maybe a little bit, but more to show how low Sakamoto has fallen. Even worse, how low on the totem pole his enemies consider him. If Nagumo's mockery couldn't get through to Sakamoto, the reality of that fact surely will. Someone who was once the greatest hitman in the world has now been reduced to a mid-tier opponent, a target the serial killers wouldn't even give a second thought. Except a retired hitman with friends and family might just be exactly what a certain killer is looking for. While Shin and Lu are shopping for supplies, they get sidetracked playing with all the dogs on display, which, absolutely relatable. They don't even let me inside PetSmart anymore because I'll just take everything home with me. But despite all the cute doggos, Shin does not think they should be wasting time for too long. If they want to be of use to Sakamoto, they both have to get stronger. Suddenly though, every animal in the area begins to howl and growl. An ominous aura fills the air, as if all the creatures were seeing a ghost. Shin turns to see a skinny man laughing at what he would consider, not me, I think they're all great, but what he would consider stupid animals. This man, who we already know as Saw, one of the 4 inmates, is clearly the reason all the animals are entering fight or flight mode. Saw admits to being ex-military, a soldier who's watched plenty of people drop dead with no theatrics or spectacle, and he thinks pointless or quick deaths are a waste, that someone's final moments should be a drama to look at. So that's why, before Saw kills Sakamoto, he's going to take everything Sakamoto has ever loved first, to make that kill as thrilling as possible. Before Shin can comprehend what he just heard, an axe rips through the air into Shin's side, launching Shin into the shelves next to them. Ironically, Saw claims he can't waste time on small fry and wants to get on to the main course of Sakamoto, so he's gonna kill him quick. Apparently, not viewing Shin or Lu as humans worth a dramatic ending, despite his earlier preaching. From the smoke, a crowbar flies at Saw, revealing Shin survived and wasn't sliced in half. Saw is just surprised that Shin was quick enough to react and block on such quick notice. Shin and Lu are surprised Saw knows them by name, to which Saw drops the bomb that Lu and Shin are both C and D ranked targets on Slur's list, respectively. It's here where reality smacks the two of them in the face, just as it did Sakamoto, and it hits Shin even harder, who, despite being a former assassin with a supernatural ability, ranks even lower than Lu, who isn't much of a threat unless she's drunk. It's possible, though, that this indirect encouragement is actually what the two of them needed to reach their next levels. Especially Shin, who takes this opportunity to dodge one of Saw's attacks and land a counter, demanding that after Shin and Lu win, Saw fixes Slur's broken ranking system. The bloodlust felt from Saw begins to lay an even thicker atmosphere of evil in the air. Impressed with Shin's tenacity, Saw offers to make their deaths interesting. But when Shin goes to read Saw's thoughts, that evil aura becomes paralyzing fear that clouds his clairvoyance. As Saw winds up, swinging his axe from a rope, the entire ceiling collapses under the weight of Saw's attacks. Shin and Lu are barely able to keep up as Saw spins his axe and continues to lay on pressure. Shin realizes that the dark cloud filling Saw's thoughts makes it nigh impossible to read for his attacks. So eventually, Saw rips open Shin's back as he tries to protect Lu, believing he's in complete control of the situation and calling them both boring. However, the duo reminds Saw not to underestimate them, or the Sakamoto family's tenacity, as they catch him off guard with a nail gun, and an even better duo than them, Axe body spray and lighter. Unfortunately, Saw's body durability is beyond natural. The serial killer casually shrugs off the flame attack and responds by causing an explosion of his own, whipping his axe into a nearby gas canister that blows up directly behind Shin and Lu, forcing Lu to grab Shin and tackle him out of the way, getting incapacitated in the blast, and making that previous hit of reality sink even deeper into the D-rank assassin's psyche. Even now, Shin needs to be protected. Shin wishes he could just be stronger, not wanting to let anyone down ever again. But as he lies wounded on the floor, Saw decides to kick the man while he's down, telling Shin that he disappointed him. For having such a cool little superpower, he claims Shin really just isn't that good at using it. Losing early is no problem for Saw though. The faster he kills Shin and Lu, the quicker you can make his way over to Sakamoto's place and start slaughtering the entire family. As Saw's axe drops its killing blow towards Shin, we cut back to Sakamoto, who's enjoying a lunch break with Heisuke. The two of them wonder where Shin and Lu are, while also discussing Shin's potential as an assassin. And Sakamoto admits, even though Shin doesn't seem like much now, when the time comes, Shin will rise to the occasion. And almost on cue, as if for a moment Shin was able to listen in on that conversation, Shin thinks of Mr. Sakamoto, before suddenly, when we cut back to reality, Saw has missed his attack, and Shin is already standing behind him. At the same time, Saw, who was once the only one filling the room with aura, feels off about Shin's movements. Shrugging it off, before Saw can even complete another swing of his axe, Shin's already grabbed a hold of his arm. Baffled, as this means Shin would have had to block an attack Saw hadn't even finished making yet, Shin makes this mystery clear. He can see the future, speaking his new power into existence before Shin relentlessly delivers a beatdown to the stun-locked inmate. And from here on out, no matter what angle Saw comes from, Shin is not only able to outspeed him, it's as if Shin already knows what's about to happen. And after Saw is smacked to the ground for the second time, Shin reveals the evil cloud that was keeping Saw's thoughts hidden actually forced Shin to fine-tune his clairvoyance and perceive even more acute signals. reading deeply into Saw's motor functions. The speed at which Shin can read a person's actions now almost exceeds the speed at which the person commits the action themselves. But just when Shin moves in to make his finishing blow, his entire body gives out. The overexertion of this new power exhausts all of Shin's stamina, keeping him frozen just long enough for Saw to reverse Uno card the situation and launch a counter slash that could be checkmate for Shin. A hand suddenly clasps Saw's cheek from behind before that attack lands though. In no time at all, the inmate is rocketed into another part of the store. Now that Shin has stood his ground, it's time for Lu motherfucking Xiaotang to step in and protect the family. While Shin and Saw were scrapping, Lu got into the ethanol cabinet of the store. And as you know from Sugar Park, it's revealed that when Lu gets heavily intoxicated, she becomes a master of combat. However, even Shin is surprised Lu would go to these lengths, noticing that Lu's at a level of drunk he's never even seen before. Which, I mean, rightfully so. Girl basically drank an entire bottle of fucking fuel. Of course, she'd be a little charged up, but Shin surmises that Lu must be so drunk she thinks she's back in the Triad crime family. Since he was already close to defeat in the prior battle, Saw is definitely no match for Lu's drunken antics. Her speed and reaction time is even quicker than Shin's future sight, casually grabbing Saw's own weapon by the rope and throwing his own attacks back at him. And within seconds, Lu forces Saw into submission, putting a spade to his neck and inflicting fear, the likes of which Saw's probably inflicted himself upon many others before. As Saw squeals for Lu to get off, the Triad Princess coldly remarks it's time to have one finger removed for every victim Saw's ever killed. And if you can do the math on that one, I'm scared to find out where the other 49 cuts are coming from after his toes are all gone. When Saw protests, Lu just stabs him again, asking who gave him permission to speak. The once big talker, who thought he was above all the other inmates, is now on his knees begging for forgiveness from the people he was literally just about to kill. Rightfully though, Lu questions Saw if he's ever shown that kind of mercy to the people that's asked him for it. Upon realization he's not getting out of this one, Saw turns tail and runs as fast as he can, in absolute fear of his evil deeds coming to an end once and for all. Finally faced with death from his own point of view. And Saw can't accept it. He cries for the two of them to get away from him, thinking to himself how quote-unquote bad endings are only fun when they involve literally anyone else other than him. Saw doesn't want to die yet. He hasn't gotten his fill of torturing others. But at this point, his fate is sealed. Not even safe in his own head anymore, Saw looks up to find his mind being read by Shin. And knowing there's no redemption story coming after this, both Shin and Lu unapologetically land their finishing blows on Saw, knocking him lights out. Meanwhile, at a nearby shrine, the tag team of Osaragi and Shishiba are performing their tradition of eating pork cutlets before a mission for good luck. But as they're taking their time, a call comes in from Nagumo, who claims to already be zeroing in on his target. In usual Nagumo fashion, he passive-aggressively teases them about how long it takes for them to get started with their jobs, hinting that everything might be over by the time all that pork digests. Shishiba just brushes this off, thinking for once they might be able to take a break, but Osaragi gets annoyed with Nagumo and scarfs down her food so they can start the search immediately. Shishiba hasn't even finished his own meal though, and would rather take his time, reminding Osaragi that it's the impatient assassins that die first. Ironically enough though, she's already halfway down the road. Stopping to pray, Osaragi wishes she will get the lucky chance to kill one of the inmates all by herself. And as if her prayers were answered by the divine itself, Dump is right next to Osaragi, recognizing her from the list of targets. Like a rocket, a lethal spike ripples through the air from Dump's palm and stabs Osaragi through the shrine wall. But thankfully, Osaragi hadn't given her offering yet and was able to deflect the blow with the yen she had on hand. Surprisingly, even without the offering, Osaragi's wishes are about to come true free of charge, to which she plans on repaying the gods for this good fortune by teaching Dump the correct way to give thanks. Osaragi slips behind Dump before she can even turn around, slams Dump's skull into the statue beside them with enough force to shatter the rock with Dump's forehead. She claps Dump upside the dome twice and then reunites her face through the ground again, making sure her nose takes a pit stop through the wooden offering cart. And you'll see right away, the first notable difference in this fight compared to the one with Saw is how easily Osaragi is able to dance around Dump, who is already a huge step above Saw, considering she's able to project large spines from her body in multiple locations of varying sizes and sharpness. Dump can extend these spikes far from her body, making it hard for Osaragi to get close. And despite dodging almost every attack, Osaragi's weapon suitcase gets lost amidst the struggle, putting her at a disadvantage. However, just like Sakamoto, Osaragi and the other Order members tend to be just as deadly with their bare hands as they are with tools. Decapitating a statue of Buddha with a roundhouse kick, Osaragi follows the superhuman feat by blue lock striking its stone head with an insane amount of force right into Dump's fucking torso. And as Dump tries to regain ground in this fight, she comments on how desecrating an icon like Buddha should be bad luck. But Osaragi, in response, wonders how anyone can see the gods as anything other than benevolent. The way that Osaragi sees it, if she were the gods, people like her and Dump, humans with no other purpose than to kill, flat out would not exist. The fact that her and Dump are alive right now proves that the gods are too kind for their own good, reminding us that at the end of the day, Osaragi and Dump are both killers. However, they represent two different sides of the same coin. Dump, with her twisted idea of love, has wanted nothing more than someone to only have eyes for her, becoming a morbid fascination with one-sided love and creating relationships where Dump has all of the power. She controls her victims through terror, because when they're scared, they truly are, in that moment, only thinking of Dump. Quite a selfish reason to kill, where Osaragi chooses to stand in the god's place as judge, jury, and executioner, taking pity on the god's tolerance and handing out punishment where she thinks they are unable to, while Dump indiscriminately chooses her next victim, tossing them aside when she's done with them out of pointless boredom. Osaragi finds purpose through eliminating killers from the world in the name of balance and peace. While Dump kills only for herself, Osaragi kills, at least what she believes, to be for others. And for once, Dump is given someone's undivided attention without needing to strike fear into them first, as people like Dump give Osaragi a reason to keep on living. And for that, Osaragi loves Dump unconditionally. As Osaragi winds up her buzzsaw, conveniently located right where they ended up, Dump finally sees Osaragi's beauty for what it truly is, before she's cleaved in two with one swift finishing motion, severed with all the tender love and care Dump would have wanted. We cut back to the variety store as an exhausted Shin and surprisingly not comatose from alcohol poisoning Lou are still unconscious. The unfinished Saw, however, since, no killing in the Sakamoto family, manages to wake early and sneaks off to the nearest taxi. Despite Saw facing the consequences of his actions only a moment earlier, he hasn't learned anything. Like a little weasel, as soon as he escapes, Saw goes right back to being evil. His confidence comes back pretty quick for someone that just got beat up, as Saw stole this taxi from a customer that already paid and is more than happy to tell this customer to shove it and that they'll have to wait on wherever they're going. Thankfully though, karma just made its second stop on the Humble train because the person Saw just stole a cab from is Hyo, one of the Order members on the serial killer case. Hyo cracks the biggest smile in the backseat and happily obliges Saw's demands. In fact, wherever Saw's going, Hyo's going right with him. Back at Mr. Reindeer's apartment, Kashima is on the phone with his master Slur in regards to the fact that two of their serial killers have already been disposed of, but neither of them seem worried by this development at all. Even worse, it seems like everything's going exactly according to plan. But before we can discover what that plan is though, Kashima is ambushed by one of the remaining killers, Apart, who was waiting in Kashima's apartment to attack him. Apart has a string wrapped around Kashima's neck ready to pop before the reindeer can even get an attack off. Kashima acts like he has no idea why Apart would betray them, but Apart tells Reindeer to cut the act, admitting he can smell their bullshit from miles away. Sure, Apart is thankful that they freed him from jail and everything, but he's always been a solo act. He hates being lied to and manipulated. It's here where it's revealed that Apart has been going off the rails and slaughtering multiple people that aren't even on the approved list, and follows this by completely dismantling Kashima's $1 million man body, which is really fucked up because bro just got that shit put back together. Apart declares he wants to connect with as many people as possible, which is just code for going on a mass killing spree with no real supervision. But despite Kashima's worry, Slur, who's still on the phone and heard the whole ordeal, encourages Kashima to relax and simply let the chaos continue. It might pay off highly to let their little experiment go out of control. And right at that moment, danger also rears its head at Sakamoto's convenience. Minimalist, the last remaining serial killer on Slur's payroll, has just arrived, and the only person guarding the store is Aoi, Sakamoto's wife. Which, in all fairness, probably not the greatest idea to leave your wife alone with 4 random serial killers targeting your family. Aoi is currently on the phone with Sakamoto, who's met up with the wounded Shin and Lu to take them to Granny Mia, a holistic healing doctor Sakamoto still trusts from his assassin days. Sakamoto is a bit concerned if Aoi will be safe by herself running the store, but Aoi assures Sakamoto everything is fine. Almost on cue, Minimalist walks in, and suddenly the phone line is cut, leaving Sakamoto confused and in the dark as to what could have happened. To explain the place that Sakamoto took Shin and Lu to, it's the office of Granny Mia, a legendary healer for assassins who, using methods such as acupuncture and herbal remedies, is known to be able to fix any battle wound possible, earning her the title of God Hands. Granny Mia is able to reignite Shin's stamina, returning his clairvoyant powers after he exhausted them, and inform Shin of the massive strain future sight can cause to his body. Granny Mia figures that Shin can probably only get away with using that ability for 5 minutes before collapsing again. Granny Mia also does a checkup on Sakamoto, admitting she barely recognizes him anymore due to the weight he's gained. Something that Granny Mia harps on him for, reiterating that Sakamoto's retirement has led people like Nagumo to surpass him in strength. And despite this just being another jab to Sakamoto's ego, it is a harsh reminder that Sakamoto is going to be facing enemies much closer to his former peak than he even currently is. As after 5 years of hiatus, Granny Mia deduces that Sakamoto's only at a mere 30% of the strength he used to be at. Unfortunately, this isn't a battle that Sakamoto can just throw in the towel for. Taro's whole family is on the line, extended and all. He can't let these animals run wild any longer. Respecting that Sakamoto refuses to give up, despite the odds not being in his favor, Granny Mia smacks a pressure point in Sakamoto's lower danshan, claiming this will help his out-of-shape body bring out more of its dormant qualities. The gang gets a call from Heisuke, who, attempting to use the height of the Tokyo Tower, has been scouting far and wide for the remaining serial killers. Though, no matter how much they should stick out like a sore thumb, Heisuke just can't seem to find a single one of them. Ironically enough, everyone's spending so much time looking for these inmates, they would have had a better job finding them if they just stayed at home and did nothing, clearly. Imposing his deathly aura throughout the convenience store, Minimalist demands to know where Sakamoto is. But despite the obvious danger, Aoi calmly admits her husband isn't home. So to get her to understand, Minimalist crushes the entire cash register, money and all, into a tiny pocket-sized ball. Aoi is 1, fucking shook, but realistically 2, at the same time, asks Minimalist the same question I would after witnessing some crazy shit like that, which is, who's replacing all that money that was inside that register? And what happened to it? Minimalist rips the counter in 2 and grabs Sakamoto's wife by the throat, demanding that she start to cooperate before he makes her look just like that cash register. But before the man can even finish his sentence, Minimalist's arm gets fucking broken. Aoi snaps that shit right at the the elbow from below and then shanks Minimalist in the neck in one fluid motion. Minimalist falls to his knees, but surprisingly, there's no blood and he's shocked to be alive, but honestly, he's way more shocked to know Sakamoto's wife has hands like that. However, when Minimalist blinks, he realizes he's not really looking at Aoi Sakamoto. He's locking eyes with Nagumo, the Order's master of disguise, who laughs cheekily, realizing he accidentally misplaced his shiv with a toy knife, which is kind of funny to think the only reason Minimalist wasn't dead in one shot right there is because Nagumo canonically fucking plays too much. Also, side note, would hate to be the next person Nagumo pulls this prank on, since the real knife is what's coming next. So turns out Sakamoto, thankfully, was not dumb enough to leave his family unattended and alone in the convenience store. Quite the opposite, in fact. Sakamoto actually called in Nagumo to look over the store while he was out training, repaying a debt Nagumo accrued probably at some point in their youth. Nagumo agreed, since realistically, they actually both get what they want this way. Nagumo gets to act like a good person, kill his target, and cut out an IOU at the same time. Much like Osaragi, Nagumo puts the power gap between the serial killers and the Order on full display, taking the time mid-fight to steal Minimalist's phone and check for Slur's identity on it. And despite Nagumo politely asking Minimalist to not make a mess of the store since he's the one currently responsible for it, Minimalist proceeds to still trash the entire place in his attempts to land even one hit on Nagumo. During this rampage, Minimalist opens a door to the freezer section, and suddenly his own reflection snaps through the glass and starts choking him out. It's never explained how Nagumo's disguises actually work or how and why he's able to pull them off so quickly, but to fool a man into thinking he's looking at his own reflection has to be a supernatural feat. I cannot accept any other explanations for this. Even with the huge size difference between the two of them, Nagumo is casually able to lift Minimalist up with one hand. And after finding out he has no useful intel, Nagumo decides to finish the job up quick, no foreplay. Opening his suitcase, Nagumo brandishes his signature weapon, a multi-tool-esque Swiss Army knife with 6 different functions. Just like Minimalist, Nagumo gets bored with killing. So by using a die and rolling for a number, Nagumo can spice things up a bit by never knowing what weapon he'll get next. Nagumo is polite enough to offer Minimalist a choice in what number he picks, but Minimalist declines since he still seems to think he has skin in this game. Nagumo performs a sweet magic trick, clapping the die away and making Minimalist cough it up like a hairball, confirming Nagumo is, in fact, just a wizard amongst assassins, and amongst all the confusion, Minimalist spits the die out on number 3. But by the time he could even look down at that number, Nagumo was already straddling his head from behind and severs that dome skin from bone. Standing amongst the demolished convenience store, Nagumo decides he might as well crack open a celebratory uncooked can of soup, as at this point there's so much profit loss after Minimalist's tantrum, another missing product won't hurt Sakamoto's bottom line any more than it already has been. Back at Tokyo Tower, Heisuke's 2 brain cells are struggling to comprehend glass ceilings. However, his hyperfixation on the glass does pay off because he notices a part on the ground floor, attempting to connect with more people. Of course, we already know this means physically cutting people open, and right before a part cheese grates this unsuspecting citizen, Heisuke's already lined up a shot, firing a ricochet bullet that bounces off all the broken glass somehow, sending itself flying right into a part's chest. But the serial killer was able to catch the bullet just in time with his hand, wrapped in multiple thick layers of string to dull the damage. Heisuke compares the part's combat ability to Sakamoto's before realizing the property damage on Tokyo Tower's glass ceiling is probably worse than a US student loan debt. And to make things worse, not that it gets much worse than life-crippling debt, a part has Spider-Man swung his way all the way up the tower and crash lands right onto Heisuke's level. And it is not long before the marksman is severely outclassed. Heisuke's entire rifle gets dismantled before a shot can even fire. But before cutting him open, a part tries to bond with Heisuke, admitting the reason he likes using threads so much is because they symbolize the connection between people. prolonging the interaction just long enough for an elevator to reach the current floor. Sakamoto emerges and perception blitzes apart, smacking him away from Heisuke. And as much as apart speaks about relationships and understanding, true connection is on display here with how much Heisuke was able to rely on Sakamoto in this instance, firing a bullet signal when things got tough as Sakamoto was on his way that let Taro not only know to hurry, but that a serial killer was found. Now with all that tension released by Granny Mia and body feeling light, Sakamoto squares up with the still standing apart, who, after feeling the power coming off of Sakamoto's punch, wonders if he will finally be the one to understand him. Sakamoto quickly realizes that he needs to go all out right away if he wants to stand a chance against Apart. But for some reason, no matter what he does, Sakamoto can't enter his slimmed down form. Apart is able to bring down the ceiling with his thread slashes. And even though Sakamoto is great at using the environment to his advantage, Apart's strings truly do offer him a level of versatility that can match Sakamoto in a fight. The crippling OCD is definitely a handicap, but still, Apart presents enough of a threat level that makes Sakamoto, of all people, wonder if he can really win without any weapons. And for someone who in the last arc won a fight with a discount sticker, a lead pencil, and a fucking dream, that really says something about how strong Apart is. As the two of them continue to struggle, Sakamoto's body continues to grow more agile over the course of the fight, finally picking up why he can't slim down and what Granny Mia did to his body. By releasing pressure from his Danshin acupoint, Granny Mia allowed Sakamoto's body to adapt to all of that extra weight he put on, perking up his bones and unleashing latent flexibility that only when Sakamoto truly accepts his current self and stops relying on slimming down would awaken a hidden strength inside of him, letting Sakamoto tap into his full power at all times, whether he's in skinny mode or not. This boost puts Sakamoto in the lead against Apart, gaining enough momentum to strike the serial killer through multiple sections of the Tokyo Tower. All the while, Apart is overwhelmed and unable to defend himself. However, he continues to struggle. This is the longest fight Apart has ever been in. He's never, quote-unquote, connected with someone for so long before. And since they're so close now, Apart hopes he can give Sakamoto an exposition dump about his backstory. But in response, Sakamoto says he doesn't have time for that shit, which I humbly support. Fuck Apart, he killed like 200 people, we do not forgive you. That being said, as Apart continues to keep up with Sakamoto in battle, the inmate manages to Family Guy cut away us into his backstory against our will. As a child, Apart was a social outcast. He didn't have any friends or receive any real love from his mother either. However, the first connection Apart can remember is the one he had with his father, the only person who ever took the time to be kind to Apart and attempt to teach him right from wrong. Unfortunately, his dad worked a lot and was only able to really encourage Apart from afar. Every time Apart tried to make a new connection, it would end miserably, even when he tried with his own mother. One day, in anger, Apart ripped apart the doll his father gave him, and eventually, this became Apart's coping ritual every time he would get rejected. Until one day, Apart happily welcomed his father home to a room full of blood, his mother silently judging from the corner behind him. Apart had, instead of a doll, torn apart an actual live animal, as if this was some kind of normal thing. In genuine care for his son, Apart's father took him to doctors for brains and personality scans. And although his father seems terrified, Apart just can't tell what he did wrong. His father almost strangles the doctor when they keep telling him there's nothing clinically wrong with Apart. But his father just can't accept that his own son would kill an animal like that in cold blood, not his son. Seeing his father in distress, Apart reaches out to comfort his dad, who recoils in terror at the thought of being touched by a monster like him. And it was in that moment when Apart saw the disgust in his father's eyes. Something snapped. Instead of accepting that what Apart thought was his only true connection to the world was severed, Apart murdered his dad in cold blood and the doctor, ripping them to pieces, just like the doll that gave Apart solace not too long ago. And as Apart played inside of his own father's cadaver, he couldn't help but feel joy, because now Apart knew for sure on the inside at least, his dad was the same as he was. In fact, as every murder Apart continues to commit confirms, everyone in the entire world is the same as Apart. And it's impossible for him to be alone because this one truth connects all of humanity. This is why Apart needs to look inside of Sakamoto. He has to make sure they're the same, just like everyone else, especially with how equally matched they are. But Sakamoto shatters Apart's illusion as he continues to endure his threads. Hearing the words of his wife, Sakamoto tells Apart that his way of thinking is wrong. Embodying the lessons that his family has taught him, Sakamoto has come to realize by now that love for his wife isn't what stops him from killing people. It's the fact that by taking someone's life, you're removing that person's place in so many other lives as well. Killing can only sever connection. It could never foster it. Apart knows nothing of human contact, and this twisted coping mechanism Apart has created is only a way for him to run away from ever actually understanding somebody. A fear of rejection that has fully manifested into complete delusion. Apart is different from a serial killer like Dump, who kills because she selfishly wants to hoard people's attention. Apart takes people apart because deep down, he's always felt different. When the one person who actually loved Apart suddenly changed up and had that same look in his eye as everyone else, the only thing that could keep Apart to feel normal was knowing, even if he's different on the outside, at least everyone's same on the inside. Something that Apart needs to constantly reaffirm through killing, or that lie will cease to hold up in his head. It's why when Sakamoto, the second person Apart has ever shared a quote-unquote connection with, rejects Apart's philosophy, it causes him to erupt in anger, cutting down multiple core pillars that are holding up the integral structure of Tokyo Tower, and declaring to Sakamoto he will not be arranging his limbs neatly when they're all done, proving that Apart's desire to prove his own personal truth about human connection overrides even his obsessive-compulsive disorder. As the Tokyo Tower begins to collapse, the tower falling symbolizes Apart's final descent into darkness. Sakamoto, unwillingly, has become the last thread in Apart's downfall. By connecting with all the people caught in Tokyo Tower's destruction, i.e. committing a domestic terrorism with a large potential death count, Apart is reaching the point of no return. If he's unable to find true connection here, he never will. And whether you want to argue if someone that's killed hundreds of people still has yet to reach the point of return, we don't have time to argue that because Sakamoto needs to hold up an entire monument with nothing but willpower and its own electrical cables. Despite being the only thing keeping hundreds of people alive right now, Sakamoto is unfortunately left perfectly vulnerable for Apart's kill shot. However, right before Sakamoto closes his eyes and says goodnight, a third killing intent immediately makes its presence known in the area. Sensing bloodlust from this high up, Sakamoto turns to notice Old Man Takamura, that elderly order member from before, making his way towards Tokyo Tower. But he's way too far away to save Sakamoto from here. What's he gonna do? This bad grandpa just cut out the legs under the entire tower in one slash, making it balance out and stop collapsing. Sheathing his sword right after and just turning to take a cab like he put in a hard day's work. In only 2 appearances, Takamura has solidified himself as one of the coolest characters in the series and someone definitely not to mess with, even if you're multiple miles in the air away from him. Anyway, off Takamura goes, mumbling to himself and wandering to the closest tapioca factory for a job well done. Meanwhile, this confusion gives Sakamoto the perfect opportunity to slip out of Apart's grasp and deliver a crippling counterattack, throwing the serial killer across the tower and beginning to use his own threads against him, whipping Apart around in the air using the strings tied to his hands as rope. Sakamoto slams Apart back into Tokyo Tower and snaps all of his wire using pieces of debris from the tower's previous destruction. But as Apart falls down into the abyss of his own making, Sakamoto catches his lifeline, telling the convicted, death row, repeat offending serial killer that it's never too late to turn your life around. And as long as Apart is willing to try to change, Sakamoto promises he'll never let go of this new connection. You know, after Sakamoto lassos his ass into next Tuesday and sends Apart bouncing down every flight of stairs of that damn tower, Sakamoto carries Apart's unconscious body out of Tokyo Tower before the police pin all of that property damage on Sakamoto because the convenience store definitely ain't popping like that. And honestly, when he gets back to the store, Nagumo already set him back a couple years financially already. Apart wakes up surrounded by the smell of a nice meal and the warm love of the family sharing that food around him. Confused as to how he got from Tokyo Tower to here, he's unable to hide his thoughts from Shin's clairvoyance. However, Apart quickly discovers that the family means him no harm. They don't want to kill Apart or use him, they just want to get some information on Slur and go their separate ways. Something that Apart appreciates, as this might be the first genuine time he's ever been treated like a normal human being. Because of this kindness, Apart chooses to trust them, also considering he's given them every reason not to trust him, and they were still willing to take that chance. Apart reveals to Sakamoto and friends the true agenda behind the release of the death row prisoners. Nagumo and the other members of the Order had already figured out that the final list of targets for the prisoners would eventually pit them all up against each other, meaning their employment by Slur truly was always temporary. The killer's main objective was to distract the high-ranking members of the Assassin Association and have them all searching for the escaped convicts, leaving the JAA headquarters running on a skeleton crew of lower-level employees, making the entire organization's stronghold a sitting duck just waiting to be hit, giving Slur the perfect opportunity to take down the Assassin Association once and for all. A record of these events later would call this day an unprecedented incident in JAA history. The Japanese Association of Assassins, formerly known as the JAA, a widely recognized and legitimate business operation in Japan that effectively holds a monopoly over all assassinations across the country. Over 1,000 licensed assassins make up their ranks, and not a single assassin is permitted to kill unless they are working for or in the company. The Tokyo Bureau, the main headquarters of the JAA, is so large it has become an integral part of Tokyo City infrastructure. All assassination contracts, as well as additional services offered by the JAA, such as weapons manufacturing or assassination cleanup, are all handled through the Tokyo Bureau. And today, a day that started like any other, would be the day it all came crumbling down. In the last video, Taro Sakamoto, with the help of his adopted family and other members of the Order, were able to successfully end the threat of the 4 death row inmates let loose in Japan. However, after defeating and rescuing one of them, named Apart, he reveals the most sinister intent behind the release of the prisoners: to remove all high-profile assassins from JAA headquarters in order to leave it vulnerable for invasion. Try as Sakamoto might to spring into action, unfortunately for the assassin world, the gears have already begun to turn. Arriving on a small innocent bike, even with a handbasket, 2 of the most dangerous men in the entire country arrive at the front door of JAA's Tokyo Bureau, politely looking for somewhere to leave their bicycle. God forbid they illegally park. Slur, better known as X, has personally decided to show his face for this special occasion. The criminal ringleader, accompanied by another extremely powerful hitman named Gaku. Gaku, who has clearly never been to the JAA headquarters, comments on how large the building is, indicating to us that Gaku is an assassin who has clearly worked off the grid up until this point, considering we just learned all legal assassination has to be permitted by the JAA and no competitor organizations exist. Slur, on the other hand, knows exactly where the bike rack at the front entrance is, appearing much more as someone returning to their old stomping ground. Encountering a security guard on the way in, both Gaku and Slur admit they aren't current JAA members. Slur claims he used to have a license, but he threw it out because it was a bad picture. The security guard doesn't play games and pulls his gun to blast these intruders on sight. But before this poor, definitely underpaid parking lot cop can pull the trigger, the newly introduced Gaku blows a complete fucking hole in the guard's torso with his bare hand, simply just continuing his conversation with Slur as if the guard was just a fly buzzing around him. And as they continue their way in, Gaku is just dusting security guards left and right, sending them to the Shadow Realm. It's not like these guys are regular police officers either. Every single guard is a license-holding trained assassin that these two no-names are just swatting away as they carry on shooting the shit. While it's kind of hard to imagine that Slur, who supposedly has an entire gang of cronies, would just show up with only one other man to take down an entire assassin organization after the short meeting Shin had with Slur in Okutabi Lab, where just his killing intent alone was enough to paralyze Shin, it was made pretty clear Slur was not a threat to underestimate. And Gaku, the newcomer who tagged along, definitely doesn't appear like much of a rookie himself. All that being said, can two people really dismantle the entire headquarters of the JAA? Now that's a thought that's even harder to believe for all the employees working in the building, even after they hear intruders have fought their way past the first floor. One worker even claims the culprits must be idiots, and another says he's not even dignifying the sounding off alarm with a response. There is literally no possible or conceivable way that two people alone could massacre their way through legions of expertly trained assassins, all of them carrying countless firearms while also being heavily outnumbered and not knowing the full extent of what they're even up against. Ha! Imagine two morons like that making it all the way up to the third floor. Do you think he heard me call him a moron? After splitting up, Gaku has wasted no time clearing all the floors of employees. Even as more teams are put together and whole gun squads are firing on him, Gaku is just casually blitzing through storms of bullets, never wasting a single attack, decapitating or just outright breaking apart the foes that get in his way. Even more veteran assassins with advanced weaponry break through a nearby wall and clock the intruder point blank with gauntlets. But Gaku comes back from this completely unharmed, revealing his polearm / meat tenderizer has a small hand cannon at the end of it, bursting off around into the veteran's face to stun him before Gaku winds up his swing and bats the veteran's skull miles away for a home run. Just when he's beginning to feel on a roll though, a chill strikes the air and Gaku loses his nerve. A strong and dangerous aura suddenly drenches the entire headquarters. Fresh from his tapioca stop after Tokyo Tower, a taxi cab pulls up to JAA headquarters. Old man Takamura has just arrived, and the senior citizen starts shredding Slur's henchmen like can openers from the moment he steps on the scene, cutting his way from the entrance all the way up to the third floor, revealing that heavy feeling of death that left Gaku shivering was coming from Takamura, the predator finally reaching its prey. As Takamura mutters sweet nothings to himself, he wanders aimlessly down the hall. And despite the look of a senile old man, Gaku's smart enough to see through that deception. The toughest battle of Gaku's whole goddamn life has just begun. On the other side of the bureau, Slur embarked on his own separate path through the headquarters. However, surprisingly, the man doesn't appear nearly as bloodthirsty as Gaku. Slur is just casually reading a book he's brought with him and avoids most conflicts by just, taking the elevator. Slur does eventually run into a group of assassins once reaching the top floor, and as all four men pull out their weapons in response, shockingly, the man who fires first puts bullets into all three of his allies from behind instead of Slur. The traitor addresses Slur as boss and casually asks Slur if he's lost weight since they last saw each other, despite, just murdering three of his co-workers all casual like. This man's name is Uda, an assassin employed by the JAA who has actually been a mole for Slur his entire last year. In their catch-up conversation, Slur also makes mention of other agents, implying Uda is only one of the many double agents Slur has working behind the scenes. Slur politely apologizes to his friend for forcing him to work away and undercover for such a long time. However, Uda admits the JAA wasn't all too bad, and it came with good pay and benefits. Which, I'm sorry, side tangent. Do you apply to work at the JAA on like fucking Indeed or something? Is it like on a need-to-know basis? You have to know someone in the business and get recommended? What kind of resume skills help you qualify? What does an assassin interview even look like? I'm getting carried away. I'm sorry. But my point is, it just seems very too easy for this man to get into the JAA for an entire year with a background in who knows what from who knows where. And the sad thing is, when Slur asks Uda if he's made friends to pass the time, Uda admits they've all probably been stationed on the 3rd floor, so they're already dead. Uda straight up just does not care at all though. He's much more focused on Slur's plan going into motion, dreaming of when this day would come for a long time. The day of Slur's revolution against the JAA, when he resets the entire assassin world to 0 and creates a new world from the ashes. Mr. Reindeer was not lying about the gravity of Slur's ambitions. Small and petty crimes like Okutabi Lab, in comparison, were merely just the beginning. Back on the 3rd floor, Gaku wastes no time in jumping Takamura, attempting to smash the weak bones of the elderly and putting all of his weight into one downward slam. Or so Gaku intended, as Takamura is just lazily holding back Gaku with the hilt of his blade. And in less than another second, Takamura's sword goes from showing a flicker of steel to severing the entire 3rd floor in 2. A slash that reverberates through every desk and concrete wall just from the force it was swung with alone. Gaku lost 2 fingers and an ear, even while dodging. But the gang member knew any further hesitation means death, instantly responding with a counterattack. But before his sword was even resheathed, Takamura, in one swift motion, dices Gaku's entire weapon to pieces, leaving Gaku to only smirk in disbelief. At least before he realizes Takamura's making another slash. Cutting back to the other side of headquarters again, Uda and Slur can hear the building structure cripple from the battle between Gaku and Takamura. Surprised that he can feel old man Takamura's killing intent from this far away, Slur comments he's surprised that old geezer's even still alive and kicking. Acknowledging Takamura as the main problem, Slur admits he needs to hurry this invasion up, but almost as if the universe itself intended to stop him, Sakamoto, Shin, and a part Spider-Man swing into the crumbling Tokyo headquarters, right on time to stand in Slur's way, conveniently crashing onto the exact floor that Slur was on, putting Sakamoto finally face to face with the man that started this whole story. After all this time, Sakamoto can confront this Slur, or X, whatever he is. But shockingly, Sakamoto doesn't refer to this villain by either of his codenames. In fact, Sakamoto calls Slur by what we can only assume is the gang leader's real government name, Uzuki. And it's here we think back to that time Shin encountered Slur at the Okutabi Lab. Slur did ask to give Sakamoto his regards personally, and it's here all of that kind of connects. How Sakamoto's bounty has anything to do with this whole assassin revolution. Sakamoto admits out loud he's surprised Uzuki is still alive, while Uzuki just remarks he's sad to see an old friend get so out of shape. But with all the formalities out of the way, Sakamoto cuts right to the chase, demanding to know why Slur put the bounty on Sakamoto's head, despite the latter being in retirement for years. But without missing a beat, Slur blinks right in front of Sakamoto, stabbing him in the torso in the middle of his sentence, simply asking, when did the world's greatest hitman become so talkative? Things immediately escalate as Slur moves way too fast for Sakamoto to counter or even keep up with. Before Shin can move in to help, Uda puts Shin in submission and puts a gun to his temple. But thankfully, both Sakamoto and Shin brought apart, who, after finally finding people who have accepted him for who he is, allies himself with the Sakamoto family, saving Shin from Uda's grasp, ready to fight to the death to protect his new connections. Unfortunately, in that very same breath, Slur Slur manages to slice off a part's arm before the death row prisoner even can comprehend what just happened. Uda moves just as quickly, seconds away from ending Shin's life if Sakamoto not recovered in time to kick Uda away. Sakamoto is lethally wounded, and blood is spraying out of the stab wound made by Slur. Honestly, even Uda and Slur are kinda surprised that wasn't enough to finish Sakamoto off. Sakamoto yells at Shin for both him and a part to stay out of this fight, despite Shin begging to help. This is clearly something personal Sakamoto does not want to involve them with. But also, based on how things have gone so far, it must be very clear how severely outmatched all three of them are to Sakamoto. This is the exact warning both Granny Mia and Nagumo have been trying to give Sakamoto since he started this journey. Even Uda, Slur's assistant, thinks he can handle all three of these protagonists himself, but Slur declines, claiming it would be a waste not to toy with his old pal Sakamoto. Slur ominously asks if Sakamoto wants to try and kill him again, and as if that was a trigger, Sakamoto springs into action, only to once again be humbled by Slur, who slips behind Sakamoto mid-attack, calls him naive, and delivers another critical strike across Sakamoto's entire body. Slur insults the Sakamoto family's no-killing rule. The way that Slur sees it, the more Sakamoto restricts himself from killing, the more the people around him are gonna get hurt. People who hold themselves back only bring misfortune about for others, a trait that reminds Slur of his old self. A comment that Sakamoto is clearly able to recognize, but of course, we aren't able to decipher this at this moment. Slur decides to give Sakamoto an example of what he means, and goes right for Shin's throat a third time, once again forcing Sakamoto to rescue him and take the attack in Shin's place, who, at this point, Sakamoto's losing a lot of blood and is barely standing. Not only is Sakamoto restricting his full killing potential, something that the JCC, an assassin school both Sakamoto and Slur apparently attended, taught them to always release at its fullest, Sakamoto is also carrying around loads of dead weight, namely Shin and his other adopted family. Slur claims the best way for Shin to actually help Sakamoto would be to take his own life, since then Sakamoto would no longer have to worry about him. All these responsibilities and other dumb things like morals is making Sakamoto's life a lot harder than it needs to be, and Slur simplifies it. Sakamoto has a heart now, and you don't need a heart to kill. If Sakamoto refuses to kill Slur, it could result in someone else dying, someone very close to Sakamoto. And funnily enough, a little birdie just whispered into Slur's ear recently that Sakamoto has a young daughter back at home, doesn't he? One sentence. That's all it took for Sakamoto to snap. His intention to kill fluctuating as strong as it did 5 years ago when he was at his peak. Perhaps even more. Slur smiles, knowing he's finally managed to get underneath Sakamoto's skin. He welcomes back the world's greatest hitman, Japan's most lethal assassin, Taro Sakamoto. But as he moves in, having every intention to rip Slur from this life, a flash of Sakamoto's family hits his eyes. In the last moment, Shin calls to Sakamoto, almost making him hesitate. But before we know if that killing blow would ever connect, Gaku busts through the wall between Slur and Sakamoto. Not too far behind is Takamura, cutting through the door and tipping its handle open, carrying the presence of death itself. The Grim Reaper makes his appearance known, putting everyone in the room on high alert. Gaku even suggests aborting the mission to Slur, because fighting a smoke demon like Takamura is not what he signed up for. Which is crazy to think this one elderly man was more of a deterrent to Gaku than toppling the entire Hitman organization of Japan. This leaves Uda no choice but to take it upon himself and attempt to take Takamura out, firing off a couple bullets that Takamura just casually cleaves right through. Uda then tries to abuse his speed advantage and get behind Takamura, but the old man just flips his grip and stabs the blade backwards, cleaving through Uda's finger, gun, and eventually his throat. throat. And although this is enough to motivate Gaku back into battle, it leads to instant regret on his part because Takamura again slips one last attack in before the blades resheathe, this time, instead of his weapon, taking Gaku's left arm. Granted, gotta give Gaku props, he's built differently enough to shake this limb loss off like it's nothing and kick his disembodied arm back at the elderly threat as if it's its weapon, but Takamura is strong enough to block that second blue lock strike kick of the arc, getting off with only a few cracks in his sword. This gives Gaku a look in his eyes as if he has an idea, but before Takamura can swing down his death blade once more, Slurp pulls Gaku out of the battle by the collar, barely saving Gaku from another entire floor-encompassing cleave. Even Sakamoto and Shin are narrowly able to avoid it, realizing they're both severely outclassed in the fight that's going on right now. Gaku tries to goad Slur into taking Takamura on, but he comically shrugs it off, as if admitting not even he could deal with someone of Takamura's caliber. Which, if not even Slur is willing to fight Takamura, that old man really might be the current title holder for the world's strongest. As Slur attempts to make his escape, Sakamoto tries to stand in his way one final time. Yet no matter how strong Sakamoto's will is, he's nowhere close to a level that can effectively clash with Slur, or, as we know now, Uzuki. Takamura also jumps in to try and ambush the gang, but unfortunately for everyone, Uda was still hanging on to life by a thread, revealing to be rigged with a self-destructive bomb. Slur apologizes once more to Uda for now making him give up his entire life for Slur's dreams. But Uda assures Slur that it's no worries at all. The traitor was most likely bleeding out from Takamura's stab anyway. Uda grabs on to the old geezer from behind and yanks his bomb cord with every last ounce of strength, cloaking the entire floor in a massive explosion. Amongst the chaos, Sakamoto was only able to shield the nearby Shin with his apron, meaning, sadly, the unconscious apart was lost in the blast. But before the two of them can rest, Slur's knife drops to the floor between them. His presence lays hidden behind the clearing smoke, whispering something to Sakamoto that we're unable to make out, but whatever was said leaves Sakamoto speechless. By the time the floor is emptied out of smoke, everyone has already disappeared, the only survivors remaining amongst the rubble being Sakamoto and Shin alone. After the invasion of the Tokyo Bureau had reached its end, over 176 assassins had lost their lives. Only a half a year after Slur began his purge of assassins, the total of registered hitmen across the country has dropped 75%. Days pass, and Sakamoto is bedridden at the hospital, recovering from his injuries. Meanwhile, a very shameful Shin hides behind the wall to Taro's room. When everything came to a head at JAA headquarters, Shin was nothing more than dead weight. It would have been fine to handle Slur's insults of inadequacy, but what hurt the most was Sakamoto's pleas for Shin to escape the tower. Even though Shin may have proved himself by standing up to Saw, what good is that strength if Shin isn't even strong enough to face Sakamoto now? Before Shin can muster the courage to deliver his get-well basket though, Hyo and Nagumo from the Order barge directly into Sakamoto's hospital room. Nagumo, in his own special way, is here to check on his old pal Sakamoto and make sure Hyo doesn't fly off the handle. But much to Nagumo's dismay, Hyo flies off the handle. Hyo demands to know what Sakamoto learned from his meeting with Slur, and Sakamoto confirms the fact that seems to even wipe the smirk off Nagumo's face. The assassin killer Slur, also known as X's true identity, is that of Kei Uzuki, a former associate of both Sakamoto's and apparently Nagumo's as well. This immediately invests Nagumo in the conversation, who asks flat out if Sakamoto failed to kill Uzuki, quote-unquote, that time. Again, alluding to whatever history surrounds Uzuki and Sakamoto that has been lying dormant in the background. We're not sure why or when Sakamoto was supposed to kill Uzuki, but the consequences of failing to accomplish this mission have led us straight down this path. But the real question really is, if Sakamoto was supposed to kill Uzuki, why didn't he? Nagumo explains that Uzuki is a former classmate of theirs from assassin training school. And Hyo claims whoever Uzuki is, he didn't leave enough of an impression at the school for Hyo to hear about him during his tenure. Considering all the rumors about Sakamoto, Nagumo, and a third student named Akao, Hyo thinks he should have at least known something. Either way, having gotten what they came for, Hyo and Nagumo make their leave. Sakamoto, however, tries to stand in their way. He bluffs, claiming Sakamoto's actually got way more information to give, but he's only gonna reveal it if the Order works together with him on this case. This would then mark the second time Hyo flew off the handle, as Hyo responds by slamming his foot down onto Sakamoto's hospital bed, splitting it almost in two. He sets the record straight and reminds Sakamoto that the Order is not his ally. Sakamoto's in no position to bargain with the JAA. Sakamoto's family is also involved in the situation now, and if he dies, who's gonna take care of Aoi and Hana? Sure, Taro can reply that he has no intentions of dying in this fight, but Hyo responds with a crippling punch between Sakamoto's eyes, tearing the already wounded man through an entire wall of the hospital. And if Hyo was actually intending to kill Sakamoto with that attack, he would have been able to do nothing to stop it. And that's exactly Hyo's point, once again finally echoing out, the same sentiment resonating throughout this whole arc. Sakamoto, as he is now, is not strong enough to fight Uzuki. Despite this, Sakamoto claims this is a duty a father simply can't shy away from. No one should be more justified to protect his own flesh and blood than Sakamoto himself. Hyo takes this as Sakamoto being selfish, not putting his faith in others. But Sakamoto corrects Hyo, saying that sentiment used to be true, but it's not anymore. And right on cue, Shin finally built up the courage to join the fray, coming from behind Hyo and helping Sakamoto throw the Order member into a nearby MRI machine, magnetizing all the metal on his body and keeping him in place. Hope that never comes back into play. Instead of continuing the fight, Sakamoto shows his vulnerability and pleads with the Order member. Sakamoto needs all the information he can get to keep his family safe. An honest-to-God, genuine favor that the heart of gold hidden in Hyo's iron chest can't bear to ignore. In order to not directly reveal the Order's hand, Hyo tipped Sakamoto off that while he can't give assassin info out to pedestrians, if Sakamoto was to re-enroll in the JCC Assassin School and access its database, they could technically hack Kei Uzuki's files, which was more than enough of a tip to send Sakamoto off on his next destination. Meanwhile, they leave Hyo stuck in the MRI machine without actually getting any information in return, something Nagumo surely is not gonna let Hyo live down for years. As Sakamoto and Shin overlook the city, Shin admits his feelings of insecurity being a burden during the JAA invasion. Sakamoto, however, responds by enlightening Shin to another perspective. When Slur brought up Sakamoto's daughter, he almost lost himself completely. Sakamoto was inches away from breaking his own family rules, but Shin was there to keep Sakamoto grounded. And Sakamoto admits that even if Shin doesn't think so, he's always saving Sakamoto. And Sakamoto needs Shin's help now, more than ever. In the aftermath of the invasion, Osaragi and Shishiba wander through the rubble and mourn the loss of their main office. JAA stock is plummeting, assassination jobs are getting canceled left and right, and worst of all, they might not even be getting Christmas bonuses this year. They've waited long enough. It's time to summon all the remaining Order members together. Meanwhile, speaking of new faces, Slur rejoins Kashima and Gaku as the former is restitching Gaku's arm together. Thankfully, the cut Takamura gave to Gaku was so clean, all the muscle tissue was surprisingly still alive. Slur admits the only real reason they even failed is because he miscalculated, thinking Takamura was no longer a threat. As long as he, the physical incarnation of the assassin world's bloodlust, exists, their dream will never see fruition. They cannot keep running wild with the small group they have left. This time, they lost Uda. Next time, the losses could be much worse. And with Sakamoto and friends now also becoming obstacles, Slur claimed they're gonna have to increase the size of their roster to make the two sides even. But instead of recruiting from inside the JAA, this time, Slur's got the idea to seek out fresh blood. You know, it's much easier to paint over a blank canvas than re-educate some mediocre assassin. In fact, the gears of Slur's plan for recruitment might already be in motion. We return to the Sakamoto family convenience store, where Shin reveals he's never actually attended the JCC. He got his assassin license from an outside exam. Therefore, The only one who really knows anything about the prestigious assassin school is Sakamoto. And after the crew looks it up, it turns out the JCC is actually a pretty damn official schooling path for the people of this world. It has an entire public website that describes its facilities, class size, and graduation rate in full detail, even sharing fun facts like 90% of attendees either drop out or die in their first 4 years. Lewis surprised both Sakamoto and especially Heisuke were able to graduate from such a dangerous place. But Sakamoto admits even as an alumni, the JCC is almost impossible to infiltrate. There's only one way in and one way out. But before Sakamoto can reveal that secret, his wife spills the beans. She found JCC entrance applications in their living room and accuses Sakamoto of attempting to send their daughter to killer school. And as Sakamoto cringes, the irony of the situation takes a while to settle in before Shin realizes, oh, it isn't Hana that Sakamoto's thinking of enrolling in the JCC? Over the loudspeakers, a pilot announces for passengers to fasten their seatbelts, among other formalities. And in no time at all, before Shin even knew what hit him, he realized the applications were for them to take a one-way plane ride to JCC Assassin University. On their way to the entrance exam to become brand new students, Sakamoto's chowing down some airline food, while Shin has an absolute panic attack, leaving us off on the perfect segue to the next destination of our story, the beginning of the JCC transfer exams. Thank you all so much for watching this far into the video, and make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see the next part as soon as possible. See you guys later, everyone. Peace.